Hey guys, it's podcast time. All right, so Sam's taking care of some family business. So as a substitute, equal or better, maybe, I don't know.
A different thing.
Yeah, Tyler Gibbons is sitting in. You've been on the show a couple times. He was a city candidate 2 summers ago. Holy shit, it's been that long. But he's not a city candidate this time. As you all know, I kind of gave up on chasing these city races as much as I usually do. I don't know. It's just I got a little exhausted with other things going on, but whatever. That's fine. We're moving on. We're doing things. So Tyler's going to sit in for Sam tonight. Sam did contribute his News of the Weird, so we'll pick that up at the end of the show, and we'll talk about that among other things. We've got these city races that Tyler and I are going to talk about, some of the candidates, what they're doing, who files their paperwork on time, those kind of things, as well as whatever pops into our heads. So we'll let this intro get out of the way, and then we'll start talking about that. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Good. I took a sip at an inopportune moment.
Oh,
there.
I know. That's what I was waiting for. I was going to say something else and then wait, and then it's my gift. My gift to the world is making everybody sound weird on microphones. How you been? I haven't seen you in a while.
I'm good, man. I'm good. I have a regular day job. I've been doing that. It's going okay. Been growing a lot of tomatoes this summer.
You did. You contributed a goodly sum, as they say, to my vegetable drawer just now, and I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. My grandmother was a gardener. My ex-girlfriend was a gardener, so I inherited her garden, and I guess I'm growing tomatoes this summer, and I've grown a ton of them.
We are on and off cycle. I am not a gardener. My wife does enjoy doing it, and we have years that we go big, and we'll plow a whole section of the yard and go big, and then we have years where we'll do like just a couple of pots on the stairs, kind of just lazy, whatever. And this year's kind of a mixed bag. She did some phenomenal sunflowers. Don't let me before you leave. We'll go check them out. They're all they're post their prime. They're all starting to do the sag thing like they do at the end of the season. But there's a couple of them that are solid 8 feet. They're huge, like big, like probably basketball size heads on them. And so some phenomenal sunflowers she kicked out this year. We've been trying some different roasting, drying techniques so we could pretend we're baseball players in the house, I guess.
Nice. I think all the heavy rains we've had have been really good for my garden this year.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got some tomatoes and a couple jalapenos we've gotten out, and then we've got a bunch of herb gardens. That's the one that's still on the stairs in pots, because that's what the ones we get into on the nightly. I had some good cilantro this year. I'm not mad at that. Gotcha. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, when I get into something, I tend to get into focus on one thing and really try to figure out how to do that one thing. So I planted 4 or 5 tomato plants, and I have a couple other things going too. But I grew so many tomatoes out of those plants that I spent the last 3 weekends canning and making sauce, and I had to throw out tons and tons of tomatoes too. But it was just I got, I don't know, gardening bigger than my ability. I don't know what the metaphor is there, but there was too many tomatoes for me to process. I've been drowning in them.
Eyes bigger than your kitchen.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. And then, so you were invited to pregame the show with some Foursquare with me and the family, which you decided to avoid. Which I don't blame you, because my kids are vicious, as am I. I'm a pretty, I'm a pretty boneheaded competitor. I can't help myself but to try to win, even when I'm beating up on kids. And so that's my favorite, when the kids have other kids over and we have a bunch of kids and I get to beat up on a bunch of kids. It's just not, it's not just my own kids I like to beat in games. It's all the children.
You like to beat all the children. Got it.
Yes, I do. Take that out of context and.
Nieces and nephews especially.
Yes, I do. My nieces specifically, especially, because my eldest niece, she likes to talk some trash.
I was going to say, aren't they the most competitive?
Well, she's 16 too, and
teenage girls, very competitive.
She kept trying to ask me for a job, and then when I finally half offered her one, it's true. She is a little bit of an athlete in her own way. She was into volleyball and swim. She did a couple of different organized things, but
could it be dangerous on the Foursquare court?
She's mean. She's real mean. Like most kids have a similar one when it's like that. The mean face they do when they're really focused hard and they really want to do something. Like, I'm going to do this. And it's always pointed at me, because whatever it is, it's just get me out in Foursquare. That's all she cares about. And there's nothing more joyous than to have that face on and then her to miss and get out on her own. And I'm like, ha, suck it.
I would imagine you make yourself a target of that.
Sure,
ire.
I think it's certainly chicken or the egg on that, on who and why's. No, it's all me. I totally asked for it. So that's Foursquare that Tyler wisely avoided. Like I said, I don't blame it at all for dodging that one. So we prefaced with when we were talking to get set up and doing some city talk, and then money and politics, whatever. That we had the little conversation on Alistair's post today, which I wouldn't mind touching on a little bit.
Sure.
But the politics god bestowed upon me a super favor. Like an hour ago, I got a text message. Let me read the text message.
Yeah, what's it say?
Quote. It says, "Hi, it's Ava with Venture Data. If you're familiar with the firm, a national research firm. We'd like to include your opinion on current topics in Tennessee. Can you answer a few questions and tell us what you think?" And they sent me a link, and so I've got it here paused on, queued up, and we're going to do it together.
All right.
If we don't agree on what we're going to say, then I'm picking mine because they sent it to me.
That's fair.
So, starting the survey from
I'm interested.
Venture Data.
I'm interested in what they're going to ask.
Yeah, and then we'll see. I'm keeping my eyes out for who's actually Venture Data and kind of stuff like that. What we're looking at. Thank you for participating in this important survey. This is a confidential survey. Your responses in this survey will be kept completely confidential, and no material that identifies your individual responses will be distributed. Please,
except for this podcast.
Right. Results will be reported in aggregate form only. We will not report your individual responses, nor will we identify you as a participant in the survey. This survey is for research. Oh man, I feel like they're going to ask some questions. I don't know. Which county do I live in Tennessee? The K one.
I agree with you.
Thank you. Are you registered to vote? Damn Skippy.
Yep.
Are you or is anyone in your household employed by a newspaper, television, radio station, or political party, or by a candidate?
Are you contracted by a newspaper? No,
but I mean, I do own a company who is in media.
Ah, okay.
And so I would say that I am employed by a radio station.
There you go. You say yes, yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes to that.
That's it. I think because you said yes.
Damn it.
Yeah, you said yes to the am I a category of person that you shouldn't listen to?
Damn it. Well, there you have it, folks.
Good survey. Excellent audio content.
Because I decided to engage in this enjoyable activity of trying to learn more about what's going on in my community and share it, that I am not capable of having input anymore. Which, as a District 18 rep, I feel like that very specifically applies to my District 18 in the House rep. I don't think she won't talk to me in any way, shape, or form, and I think that's as much because of this as anything else. I don't know. I don't know if she is just not a communicative representative or if she just avoids me. I like to think in the same way I like to beat up on children in Foursquare that she doesn't want to deal with me because of how awesome I am at the job. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I think there's a trend amongst politicians at all levels to shy away from media personalities.
That they don't have, right.
Yeah, unless they've got a friendly relationship with them, which I think is kind of sad. I think it's kind of, again, chicken or egg, whether it's the cause or effect here, but it's like part and parcel to the death of local and journalism and other journalism, that we, aren't able to have those perspectives anymore.
Yeah, and so okay, so I then in the more constructive stuff, Sam and I talked last week that the money and politics kind of stuff is one of the things, but like the interaction of, and so I want, like, we kind of threw out accidentally in process, and I would like your thoughts on this of and you know me, I'm not one to have the state mandate anything, but to have the state mandate that state reps, so my Elaine Davis and my Senator Massey do an annual constituent survey. It'd be funded by the state, so it's not out of their pockets or it's not out of their campaigns, or they don't have to go look for donors to help them pay for it or whatever. I think you would do it as a subset inside the state website. I would think would be the logical way to do it. Sam wants it to be a mailer where you mail your responses in. It's like
more census style.
No, nobody's going to do that. But yeah, something. But just something in the sense of, because like I think Tennessee specifically, but I think nationwide we have a lot of this stuff that it's like everybody out here in the real world agrees on a lot of topics and a lot of issues, or at least are specifically off of where our legislature is moving us. I think Tennessee is a more blatant version of, but I think it's not unique to Tennessee by any means. Like I think the easy one. I think the state of Tennessee population is not on board with where the state legislature is with abortion.
So you're saying we need a more like official proof of that? I mean, don't we already know that from the polling data that we have, though? I mean, it's like, I guess, what is this going to add that's not already given by that, other than it's more official?
I mean, I think the more interesting part of that, out of that data would come out, because I think it would actually lean towards some of the stuff that they're doing, because these are the people that are voting them in, because these would be the active voters.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it could
be more engaged people participate,
right? And I mean, as I would think, as an elected rep, it would be a bonus. It would just be a campaign bonus for you, because then you get to talk about it. Because it came up because Sam's News of the Weird last week, and I think he said it was some UK parliamentary election, something like that. There was a guy whose platform was basically AI generated by his constituents. So he went out and he built some sort of, like, I don't remember the details on how he constructed this thing, but it was basically like, this is the topics and the results that the people whom would be voting for me are interested in. And so I'm going to build my platform around what the AI is telling me. You know, there's a whole subset of, like, when the computer decides that it wants to pick the topics and doesn't care about what the people think. That's a whole other issue. But to me, it's like, if he commits to it and says, okay, the interaction with the community and the community is telling me this is what they do, I'm going to do that. I feel like that's supposed to be what the job is anyway. And so to put a more official one in place where it's like, okay, well, the constituent survey came out on this topic and we all replied with, no, don't do that, and you voted for that, that should be like a big red flag next election cycle. Or more importantly, it should be I'm sorry, even though the party tells me I shouldn't vote for this, I have to vote for this because my constituents are clear on it. It's not up to me. It's up to my constituents.
So just like a record for accountability's sake, and for the elected to be able to point at and say the people definitely wanted this,
right? And because I think twofold. I think part of it would help engagement at large, because I think if people see that they said, hey, do this thing, and then that person does that thing, even if it doesn't pass, but at least there's the record that they did what you asked. That says, okay, well, our voice is doing something in this process. We're not just throwing somebody there to do what they want. We're throwing somebody there to do what we asked them to do. I would hope that would help engagement, because I think that's what, to me, I guess I think nationally, I think the broad reason that engagement sucks is because, you know, what's it matter? And I think that's a valid question. I think a lot of people just sit down and they look at campaign ads and go, it's all the same. It doesn't matter.
Or they feel like their vote doesn't have an impact, or there's like not a difference between the candidates. I guess that feels like the top three-ish reasons.
Yeah, I think it's like, you know, because like I'm the weird one that's going to enjoy this repeat of 2020. I think this is going to be a great presidential cycle for the sake of stupidity.
If Donald Trump is nothing else, he is certainly an entertaining presidential candidate.
You know, so. But I mean, because I think because I think one of the problems then is and there was a survey. I think it was a Pew poll did it. I don't remember who it was, but one of my podcasts that I listened to was talking about the survey, and it was a decent sized one. It was a couple thousand people, not a huge survey, but it was kind of like the generic, like, Trump Biden, who you voting for, or Trump DeSantis in a primary, who you voting for. Just did all the different mixes on there, and then there was one that had kind of a feely question on it, and it was something about like, do you feel that there's a significant difference between these two candidates, and did the same kind of set. And when it got to Trump Biden, it was like, nah. The majority of people were like, no, I don't really see a huge difference in these two candidates. That is why people don't vote.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to do whatever the machine makes them do in the process, and it's nothing about me and you. We all know it's not going to change anything. So,
hey, that's the theme I'm going to discuss when we get to the local elections later.
Okay, well, let's roll it back, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about.
Well, just, you know, what is the difference between the candidates, like you said? Like, I mean, obviously there are differences between Trump and Joe Biden in mannerisms and their personal opinions and a lot of things like that, but the mainstream or the way the government works, the bureaucracy we're all used to, it didn't change that much between the two of them, right?
There's our problem.
Yeah, okay. Right. We got
technical issue here.
Yep. But yeah, obviously there's definitely a difference between the two, but I can see how people would say there's not enough difference between the two for me to engage and vote over it.
Yeah. I don't think the home's getting recorded, so we'll just deal with it. I apologize. I'll blame that on Scott. That's Scott's mic. Okay, good. Sorry. Apologize. Yeah, but exactly. I think that's the thing, and I think it goes across other ones. I think, you know, especially here locally, since we're especially countywide at least, we're so stuck in the the Republican primary is the county race anyway.
Right.
What's it matter who the Democrat is? So and I think
Helsley had a pretty good run last time.
But I think too though is that I would argue, and I'd be curious if like a News Sentinel or somebody that had the mass to try to pull it off would do a local survey on how many people in Knox County voted in the primary in May. Because I think a lot of people, me for the longest time, one of them, didn't understand the whole August general with federal primaries and then November general has no local. Like we were discussing it last week, and it's like I think that there are probably a good number of people in Knox County who think they voted for Mayor Jacobs who didn't, because they only went to the November general and they just assumed they voted Republican all the way down, and they assumed Glenn Jacobs was on there, and he wasn't. And I think that, and so take that step back where in Knox County all that really matters is the primary. Most people don't realize the primary is in May. The people that do realize it are party people, are part of the apparatus, if we're going to use those kind of words again, are neck deep in the game, not the normal Joes. They're not coming out to an August general election because they just think it's a different primary or whatever. They don't think it's
right.
And so I think on top of doesn't matter who I vote for. Now I don't know when to vote for the right person because I don't know what goes on here.
Like the less aligned with a major presidential national election cycle an election is, the less attention it gets. Sure. We got the opposite problem where things get too crowded though when you've got too many elections at once.
Which last year was epic in that sense. But at the same time, it's like, well, like the county charter realizes it. Mm-hmm. The county charter, if there's a change in the county charter and it has to be elected on my unit, it has to be in November. If the state does one, if there's a constitutional change to the state, it has to be in November with the governor race. And it's like, well, the mayor of Knox County is not important enough to be on the ballot on the one that we all agree is the important ballot.
Right. And you would think that the mayor of Knox County and the city of Knoxville would at least be at the same time. Like you would think those, like the local elections for the mayors should align, I would think. But
I think the rotation is probably not a bad way to play that part, but it still should at least be. I don't know. I mean, I think the city made the dedicated choice to do the odd years to specifically be off those ballots. Because I think, to be fair, I think for the average Joe out there that doesn't pay that much attention, if I'm going in there and I see two mayor races, I'm going to be confused. Because I'm going to have a city mayor and a county mayor race at the same time. Or maybe more importantly, if they're on the same...
I think it's a question of civic literacy there, though. Like, if you got two mayors on the ballot, you probably should know which one you're voting for.
Well, I wouldn't have them because I don't have a city race, but... I don't know, because I would, I don't remember. Like, civic literacy is an enigma to me. I don't know that exists in the general culture of things. I don't know that. I think last time you were here, we were talking about like, what do we want kids to graduate from school? Functional societal citizens. I would think civics literacy would be part of being a generally useful human being in a society, but it doesn't seem like that is the state's...
It's not prioritized in our state education
That's
system.
not the state's priority in it, and there's reasons for that, and we can guess all we want at what those reasons are, but, I don't think the civic literacy is there. Like, I don't know, I probably bring on, and again, the Foursquare, this metaphor of the night. In the same way that I bring on the ire of my niece in Foursquare, I will bring on the ire of the voter because it's your guys' fault that you're too lazy to take the 5 minutes to figure it out. I'll give you a little bit of latitude in that your sources generally suck. It's not, you don't have some particularly strong sources. The state, the city, and the county, for that matter, don't do a very good job of making it easily accessible and understandable through their websites. Our local media is not very good at giving a shit about it either. So, sorry, but it's still your fault. It's not that hard to take a little bit of effort to it. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Compass guys. All their
I would say the info is out there. I mean,
all their election stuff's outside the paywall too. Mm-hmm. So the one that's actually good at it gives you that part for free. Mm-hmm. So don't subscribe to Compass because they're great. But if you don't want to, you could at least wait till near election cycle and you'll get some good coverage on what's going on from them. So at least bookmark the page for every year in Knox County, or in the city of Knoxville. At least every year you have an election, bookmark the page, check every year, and you'll get some good info on it, what's going on in this cycle.
I mean, the larger local papers, local news stations, they at least have a page that covers the elections, like article about everything. So the information is out there, to let you know who the candidates are and when they are, but it's not heavily promoted for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'd push back on that. So this started for me because of the Manus Oster primary. Mm-hmm. because
Well, I agree. And certainly that the depth, your interviews with candidates is one of the reasons I started listening and paying attention to the podcast.
Right.
Is because you were getting a level of depth there and some kind of candidness that you didn't get in the. I mean, what I'm saying is like when you go to knoxnews.com, there's an article that says when the election is and who the candidates are. That's all you're getting.
Right. The WVLT one that just set me off was Oster did some school board at some point, and she's an active whatever in her Cedar Bluff neighborhood group, and she was on the sheriff's whatever committee thing forever. And then Eddie Manis ran for mayor last year for the city, and he owns that tuxedo place. Primaries on that day. Cool. I know lots now about these people. Let me go vote. And that doesn't count the couch Democratic opponent in the general later. That wasn't even mentioned in that little. But I mean, it was a paragraph, and it's like, how am I supposed to know anything or make any sort of decision on this paragraph?
It's not enough to make a decision. No.
I miss Eddie. I wish Eddie would have stuck around. I don't blame him for getting out, but I wish he would have stuck around. I thought he was a good candidate. I thought he was a good representative, and I would have liked him to stick around. I disagreed with him on a handful of things, but by comparison,
Right, yeah,
right? Because we have to, because it's on a spectrum.
It's almost an agreement.
It's a well, and you know, politics has to be on the spectrum because the way it works, it has to be on the spectrum of comparing to who is or isn't there instead of. You know, because there could be somebody else there than Elaine Davis, and I could miss Eddie for different reasons, or I could like this person better than Eddie. It's just it's in comparison to whom replaced him. I'm not a fan of whom replaced him. So, anyway, city races. What do you got? You took notes. Everybody got their paperwork figured out.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a little like 2 or 3 people. I think Amelia Parker was one of them that had like a late filing or something, but it's all been corrected. I filed like all of my paperwork late.
Yeah, I think it was Mr. Lawhorn and one of the mayorals, and there was one other. I think it was Matt. Actually, I think it was Matt Best.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm not 100%. That were significantly late, like a week plus late.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting. I don't know. Do you listen to the Compass Guys podcast at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So the episode after the filings came out, they did a little bit talking about it and mentioned that a couple people hadn't filed yet. Then the next week, one of those people still hadn't filed yet. And when they did their questionnaire, I jumped in on the questionnaire. I was like, so what happens if they don't ever? And nothing. Like it's really pretty soft. Like it's just
you get a sternly worded letter. I can tell you what happens first. You get a sternly worded letter, and then after you get a couple of those, they call you and they're like, "Are you going to bring those papers in?" And then you say, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that," and you bring them down. So I didn't have any. My campaign account is still active, but I haven't had any withdrawals or deposits in the last since the campaign ended.
Right.
But I still have to file a piece of paper every 6 months that says there's been no money in or out of this account in the last 6 months.
Okay, so while we're on it, what happens when you so?
The letter was sternly worded, and eventually there's some kind of financial penalty or something.
Right, it's like 5 days after the certified letter shows up, and they have proof that you got the letter. 5 days after that, it's a $25 a day fine, and then after like 30 days, it gets in like $10,000. And
yeah.
But it's still just financials, which I mean that would be shitty because you're going to pay out of your campaign to pay your fines for not fine. And then you have to show your filing for paying your fines.
Yeah, I guess so.
But on a longer term thing, so if you like, how do you close your account with the?
You spend all the money. You have to you send them you send them a form that says you spent down to $0 on what you spend the money on. So like I could take the balance of my account and write a check to a local charity or a PAC or something like that with the balance, or I could donate it to candidates up to the limit.
Until you burn through it all.
Right.
See, that was what because I remember talking about that. We were talking about, what was it, AOC a couple of cycles, I think the midterm cycle, had donated max to like a couple of other, House rep races because she was in an off cycle anyway.
Right.
And it's like, that's kind of weird. I'd be kind of mad if I donated to her and she's donating to somebody else. Like I get the argument of, well, I'm already here, so I don't need the money. But if that person is, on the floor with me, we can maybe get some of the stuff you want me to get done.
Yeah. On a practical level, you get these, political celebrities, right? There's how many people in the House of Representatives? Like
4,052,000,
500 something, right? But how many names do we know? Like 20.
Yeah.
So AOC is one of 500. So it's if she's well known enough, it makes sense to use that name to. People are going to want to give to that popular person, and that person will give to people who are ideologically aligned with them.
Right. What is that? That goes into like, what was it? It was Marcia was hoofing for Herschel Walker, And it's like I get it. Like forget the specifics about the people part of it, but like again, same idea as the AOC thing. But it's like, why would I give $1 to a Georgia Senate race?
Right.
Like,
right.
What are we talking about here? Like, that's the whole point of having these separate voting things is to have representation separately. So Georgia makes their own decisions. Why should I contribute to what Georgia's doing?
Yeah, I feel that way too when I get, I'm on all kinds of mailing lists now because I signed up for ActBlue and I had an account on there. So every Democratic candidate sends me, fundraising, and I get stuff from like state reps from Illinois or whatever. It's like, oh, this is a very competitive race, and your money could. So that they try to sell it that way. That like. This race is important for some national reason. Like the Georgia race tipped the balance of the Senate.
Right. But it reaffirms the whole premise of that it's not about the person, it's about the party. You're voting parties, and the parties are going to do what the parties want to do. It doesn't matter who the people are, or even what they tell you they're going to do when they go in.
That's the system we got, man.
I hate it. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, we agree.
It's a fucking problem. Because again, it goes back to the stupid survey thing that they wouldn't do, even though it's a.
Oh, they would totally ignore the results. They're not going to. They don't care about that. Their biggest donors, the people that fund their advertisements, fund their campaigns, don't care about that. So why would they care about that?
Right. That was the question Sam asked last week. It's like, how much do you have to donate? Like, where's the line when you get to say this is what you're going to do? Like, how much do I have to donate to your campaign before I get to say, hey, that thing that's coming up, this is what I want you to do with that.
Yeah, when you look at the disclosures, even at the national level, it's like not that much. Like $10,000 is a lot that people donate. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of, especially in presidential races and big Senate races, there's a lot of dark money with the PACs and all that stuff, right? Where you can't directly see who it's coming from, but they're still supporting somebody that they're ideologically aligned with.
All right, so we accidentally went here to money and politics anyway.
Of course.
Like, the problem is I don't see a solution. Like, I think the Citizens United thing's weird. But at the same time, like, there's part of me that kind of gets it. Like, I kind of get the premise. It's like, so, like, for me, for example, I'm a county resident. I own 3 businesses, or I own one business that has 3 locations. All of them are in the city. Like, it could make a difference very, very hard to me on my bottom line of what happens with this mayoral race that we're looking at here. So, if my business, for my business sakes, wants to donate to a candidate, I don't see that as kind of as shady as everybody else kind of makes it out to be. Now, I understand that it's different and there's dark money and all the other stuff too.
Who is the constituent? That's the question too, right?
Right.
If you have a business in the city but you live in the county, are you a constituent of the city? I mean, you chose to do business there.
I agree. And so. and I don't own the building that it's in. If I did own the building there is a way I could vote in cities. Because that's a one weird.
So there is an accommodation for that.
Well, for the landowner, not for the business owner,
right.
Unless it's the business and land are the same owner. But I mean, I guess I could lean on my landlord or my different landlords that I have and be like, hey, do some leaning for me, and it's just an extra step, I suppose. But I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I kind of get the premise. It's like what happens politically in the city has a significant impact on me.
Oh, for sure.
And my business. And I'm still on the Metro kick, even though I haven't talked about it as much. I still think Knoxville needs to go Metro. I think this county-city government overlap is dumb.
Well, I think you could expand that idea even more, though. You say, well, what happens in Knoxville affects what happens in Nashville or what happens in Maryville or, it happens around Knoxville because if there's big economic, say the baseball stadium. I mean, obviously what's happening in Knoxville is impacting Sevierville,
sure.
Right? Where Knoxville is, I don't know, taking away or if the baseball stadium is moving.
Right, and I would respect the premise that if I guess Sevierville, the city of Sevierville is who owns the current stadium, if they wanted to, if prior to all this going down, if they were trying to lean politically on, maybe not lean politically on candidates, but at least support candidates who would not support the stadium thing so that they could keep their stadium kind of
So
deal.
If like people in Sevierville donated to Knoxville politicians.
Not so much people in Sevierville. But at least in my perspective, again, this is on the Citizens United concept, is that it's the business that would be involved. And since Sevierville government is the landlord for the current stadium, I could understand that if they wanted to contribute to not Kincannon, because Kincannon was on board with the thing in the last race, I could see how that would make a logical sense to them.
Right. So then the question is, who's a constituent? Who has the right to vote? When does it say? When do you say that?
Right. I guess
you have enough interest in this election that you get to vote in it. Well, that's not necessarily true. You can have a lot of interest in an election, but you don't get to vote.
But I'm not asking to vote in it. I'm just saying that I understand why
they would want
why a business would want to contribute to a candidate that would further their cause because they do business in or with.
For sure, and it's allowed. it's legal, so why wouldn't you?
Right. I mean, but again, that's why like that. I kind of get the premise on why the argument could be made on why it should be allowed.
But I still don't like it when somebody from Illinois asks me for a donation for
Sure.
a state race.
Sure. And again, it's like, because what are you going to do for me? But that's not a question we're supposed to ask as constituents anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay.
but again, I don't know. I don't know what the, Sam always talks about, I think he always says he thinks it's Mexico, we're not sure, but they have when you announce your candidacy, they have a very short window of when you're allowed to collect, when you're allowed to fundraise. And so it doesn't matter if you announce 2 years out, you have 6 months to fundraise. And so if you announce 2 years out, the last 18 months, you can spend your money, but you can't fundraise anymore.
Well, do they have people not in the United States too? There's a difference when you're running for president when you've technically announced or you've technically not announced.
Right.
So do people
I don't
not
know.
campaign for
Right,
12 months?
How long was
officially...
DeSantis not a presidential candidate?
Yeah, right. So
before he was.
That sounds loopholey. I wonder how it works out for him.
Right. I'm curious about it too because, you hear it all the time. The U.S. has one of the longest election cycles of any major country, because again, one of my podcasts that I listen to a lot that's national politics. It was November. It was pretty much right after the midterms. Their intro talks about, we're getting ready for it's whether you like it or not. 2024 is upon us.
Yeah.
And so we're prepping.
But DeSantis is already almost out as a candidate, so
right.
A major candidate's almost out of the race already.
Which I always found that is what I find watching the grander media do its thing in this presidential cycle. What I think I find the most fascinating is DeSantis was always a candidate. Before he announced, he was always a candidate. He was treated as a candidate. He was polled as a candidate. But then you had, what's the lady from, Massachusetts? Who's running for president as a Democrat?
Oh gosh.
It's somewhere up there in the Northeast, whatever. But she was actively running, got her petition, did all the actual process, announced her candidacy for president, and was never polled as a presidential candidate in any of the polling. Marianne Williamson.
Oh yeah.
I understand that she's kind of a joke or whatever if you really know what's going on, but she's actually actively being a candidate, but never gets a question on a poll that involves her against Biden in a primary. But DeSantis is actively not saying he's not running for president over and over and over again, but every poll that goes out includes DeSantis.
That is interesting.
And it's well,
who made that call?
Right. Why are we making this who knows what's going on better? And again, I can respect the idea that she's not a contender legitimately. But even in that,
well, yeah, but maybe it turns out DeSantis wasn't either.
Right.
If they could have spent the last 12 months, talking up Marianne Williamson, and then, then the collapse happens to her. But DeSantis, what's the difference between the two of them, other than he had the attention?
Right, and maybe the attention could have made her a real contender if you would have given her a half a second of airtime.
Right.
Because apparently, from what I understand of her campaign, she's kind of picking up the Bernie Sanders torch.
Yeah, and I guess DeSantis has been very piss off the libs or whatever. It's been kind of his thing, right? He's going after the woke. He's putting his "Don't Say Gay" bill in school. We're fighting Disney because they're pushing agendas, and it's been a very PR kind of governor.
Right,
it's
Trump without the Twitter page.
Yeah,
that's what everybody That's the reference everybody makes about him.
I've even seen some videos that compare his mannerisms to Trump, and you can see he's trying to move his hands the way Trump moves his hands, or he's having the same kind of speech patterns, but it looks like he's imitating.
Right.
I don't know if he does that all the time, but I've seen some videos where it's well, yeah, it does look like he's trying to do that.
Yeah, I don't. Again, it's just making the apparatus joke again. It's the apparatus had made the decision that DeSantis was a legitimate candidate, and that all polling and all conversation for the Republican primary. And again, I get it. We have an incumbent Democrat, so the Republican primary is actually more traditionally an active primary where the incumbent usually doesn't have a stronger primary process. So I kind of get that, but it's we are being told that this person is a candidate when they are saying they are not, and this other candidate who's saying they are gets zero conversation. I don't understand it.
I guess Marianne Williamson wasn't inflammatory enough. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, or it's we can't allow the why would we? I don't know. I don't know how to word what the
I mean, DeSantis was in a governorship. Marianne Williams is not in a position of political power.
So. Right. And he did outperform the totality of the midterms for the Republican Party and stuff like that.
He had a good run in Florida.
Right.
I think that's what the question has always been, is once he gets outside of his Florida bubble where he's I mean, he's not very good. He's not very good as a campaigner. Like, you just watch him in videos and you watch him speak, and like when he's on a stage and he's doing a speech, it's fine. But like the casual interactions he has, there's that picture of him wearing the dumb boots. You know, there's lots of photos of him looking like eating the pudding with his fingers. You know, it's just like he is.
It's a very uncomfortable commercial to watch.
Right. So he's good as an administrator and an operator and getting other people in the government apparatus to exert his will on the state, right? To like write the bills he wanted and to push his AGs to go after the cases he wanted in Disney and all that stuff, right? He's good at that, but he's not good at, you know, you look at the people who have been president and they've got some kind of George W. Bush is like a friendly guy. People always say he's friendly. Barack Obama is that. People always say he's friendly. He's well spoken. Trump had his own brand of charisma.
Right. They always do which candidate would you like to have a beer with?
Yeah, exactly.
Survey.
Yeah, you hear that. I'm fully on board with that idea or whatever. That's really what a president should be. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. People care about that.
Right.
So DeSantis is just like too weird.
That's the world we live in. That's the world we live in. That's crazy. So crazy. All right. So anyway, back to local. You had some notes on city people.
Yeah. So we
got
these
city races.
We got what? There are 6. I only have 5 note cards, but I think there's 6 races going.
Oh, one doesn't count. Which district are you in anyway?
I'm in Charlie's district.
Why aren't you running for District 5 then?
I like Charlie all right. So.
Somebody should run.
You know, if I'd known he was going to be unopposed, I might have thrown my hat in the ring. But by the time I was like, it's too late. You know. Anyway,
son of a bitch. All right.
So we got the mayor's race.
I think that the judge. Let's start with the judge.
Okay.
I think that's the most interesting one to me, just because
this is the one.
This is the first contested.
I don't know why I'm supposed to care about it. That's.
I agree. Well, because I made the joke. I make the joke often. It's like, I want to vote for as many people as possible. Like, they work for us, quote unquote, that kind of thing. We should have as much input on as much people as possible. But the more I think about it, the judge thing just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, who should pick judges? And like, maybe it should be some kind of panel of lawyers that has prosecutors and defense attorneys on it or something. My ideal scenario or whatever. But like, yeah, it's like I have no idea how I'm supposed to pick a judge. It's
not a policy. It's not a policy thing. They just execute what's in front of them. It's. I think one of the things to me that after paying attention, a lot of these type of jobs, the mayor's an obvious one, but I think even in this one, as much as it is the person who's going to sit on the bench, it's also the administrator of the office. And like, because going on the tangent in the county last time, it's like, you got county clerk. It's not the person you're going to go see at the DMV.
Right.
Sherry like you might accidentally find an occasion where Sherry's sitting across the desk stamping license plates for you. I'm sure she is capable of doing that job. But the reality is the job she is doing, that she's elected to do, is to administer that office, to hire people, to fire people, to set policy for that office. How that office is doing it. But even setting policy, she only has a little bit of control over, because the state tells her how she's allowed to run her office. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very narrow window of what they can actually do. Because I remember trying to interview her, and it was really hard. Because, and I don't fault her for it, but she's justifying her existence. Because it's kind of a boxed-in job. There's not a lot you can do, and I think
it's an important job, but it's not like one where you're making bold policy decisions one way or another. Or you're changing the direction of government. It's a functionary kind of role.
Right, and I think the judgeship falls under that category. I think there are some things that they can do as far as maybe, because it's such a narrow window of cases they're going to see anyway. But apparently there's some talk about doing some separating some courts out, and so instead of having everybody in the general thing, it's going to have some underage consumption hearings,
like
separated from adults.
Diversion stuff. Yeah. I guess that's under the judge's purview. It's like a judge can decide we're going to have a drug court and we're going to send people there who have minor violations, and they'll go through this program and do rehab instead of going to jail. So, I guess judges can have different programs like that, and obviously, one judge may be more lenient than the other. Like, maybe I'm biased in this race because I'm pretty sure that Rawson gave me what is it? You get the driving school when you get a speeding ticket or whatever. I'm pretty sure he's given me driving school at least once.
Nice.
So,
well, did you deserve it?
Doesn't everybody deserve a second chance?
Oh, so you're okay. So you prefer the driving school to the ticket? Okay, gotcha. It was cheaper than the
it was cheaper. You don't get the points. That's the big thing. Is you keep, and if you. I don't know how I thought the way the rule worked was like you were allowed to do driving school until you had points on your record, and then once you got the points, you can't do the driving school anymore. So it's like you have one opportunity to do it, right? It diverts the points, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I haven't had a lot. I'm trying to think.
But I don't know that, like, do I vote for Judge Rosson because he's more likely to give people gentle,
right.
be more gentle people with traffic tickets, and Tyler Cavness is he's gonna crack down on people who are, put up graffiti.
And which one do I want? Is it because I'm more likely to be in his court, or is it because I want the things that his court is taking care of to be?
Like, maybe I don't think they should crack down on X, Y, Z. Well, I don't. Right. But with municipal stuff, it's all minor. It's like violation stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I'm assuming it was him. I mean, it had to be him because he's been there almost as long as I've been alive. So I had a friend of mine who, on a game day, was stuck in traffic, and it was one of those everybody was honking, pissed off, trying to get out of traffic or whatever, and she happened to start honking and cussing at people around her and stuff within earshot of the cop who came and gave her a ticket for illegal use of the horn. And again, I'm assuming, I don't recall specifically, but she asked me to come to court with her because she's like, how's this? I don't even know what to do. And I was like, okay. And so we go and he's sitting there. And he's like, what does this say? Like, I don't know. What am I looking at here? She's like, it's illegal use of the horn, sir. He's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
She didn't even like she was so freaked out about it. She didn't even get to explain. She didn't even get the opportunity to explain. He's like, this is dumb. Bye.
Yeah, right. Well,
but again,
the question's which judge do you want? The one that's going to stop people, punish people when they break the law about honking their horn, or the judge that's going to let these horn honkers go?
To me, it brings into question. I would like to understand the ordinance a little better on how the city thinks that is a reasonable ordinance to have in place in the first place. But
right.
That's a bigger.
I mean, it could also be that he's familiar with the ordinance and it has to be so egregious that he's like, "There's no way."
I mean,
again, maybe he just never sees it. I don't know.
Well, but if it's like, if the way I understood it, because we went and looked it up when we were going through this whole thing, the way I understand it, it's like you're only allowed to use your horn in case of emergency, so you can't use your horn really. It's really what it is. It's like unless somebody's about to like turn into you and you're honking to alert them that they're about to do something, or you're honking because you're just going to run the red light. Like I mean, to me, it's like. I don't quite understand
when you are allowed
when the legal use of the horn is supposed to be. Because I remember watching a video in my driving class in high school where it was a funny video because it was the most ridiculously happy dude, just like driving down the street and there's a guy on the bike over there. See the guy on the bike over there? He's coming up the crosswalk. I assume he's going to stop, but I don't know, so I'm just going to go a little nah. And so like friendly. The whole time just a little happy honk.
That was going to be my question. Is like you're in traffic, you're yelling at somebody, you're honking at him. The cop comes over, you're like, no, I didn't think he saw me.
Right. I was like, yeah, but you have to know it to proceed with the lie.
I'm a reasonable person, and I reasonably thought that this other reasonable person did not see me before I honked my horn.
Right. That his reverse lights came on. I thought he was going to back into me. What do you want me to do? Yeah. I was using it properly.
That's right. I did my best.
Right. I did my. That's what was that? Who was that? That was a Dane Cook special. Do you remember that one?
I don't know if I remember.
Was that the reference? He has a whole sketch. He has a whole bit where he's talking about I did my best. It's great. Anyway, when Dane Cook was the man of comedy.
I do remember some Dane Cook. I liked some Dane Cook.
Yeah, he was good. He was fine. But yeah. So again, back to the judge race. I don't know. Like I don't know what we're voting on. Like I don't know what difference does it make realistically.
So did you get any more clarity? Did you talk to any of these people? I haven't talked to. I talked to Rosson and Cavness for like 30 seconds, but like I had no idea what to ask them.
Right, I haven't talked to any of them individually.
I saw them at like various campaign events or whatever.
Yeah, and they had a forum this past week, and like the question of term limits. It's the only non-term limited job in the city. And there was a question on term limits that had come up, and everybody else is like, 2, maybe 3 terms seems reasonable. And Rosson's like, nah. Yeah. But he gave a reasonable response, and it's like, nah, because this is an experience job. I'm a better judge in this court today than I was last week, than I was 5 years ago, than I was 23 years ago when I started. Because it's an experience-based job. And, I mean, agree or disagree, but it's a reasonable outlook on it.
But then, I feel like the counter argument to that is like, well, we want some continuity in government. So we want, you should retire and be able to advise the next generation. Something like that. But
right, but I mean, the other question is like how much. What we've been talking about the whole time. How much change is going to happen anyway if we do vote somebody else in?
Right.
Because the interesting, I think the most interesting part of it, and I think it's Mr. Cavness, is like 9 months older than the cutoff for age requirement.
Well, so he'll be incredibly experienced by the time he finishes,
right? Because he could theoretically, because Rosson's like 75,
right? He could do it for
45, 50 years.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a pretty incredible It is
a good gig if you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what's Feinstein in California or whatever. Feinstein. I don't mean to.
Rosslyn is looking much healthier than Feinstein. I'll say that.
And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not mad that I'm not a city voter because I don't care. Like, I wouldn't know how to care about this one.
Right.
Like,
I am a city voter. I am engaged in local politics, and I don't know how to care about that.
And I think a procedural issue that's interesting too is that the mayor's race and the judge race exclusively can primary out and not have a general, which I think is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I mean, the mayor. I mean, I get it, but I don't because again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Again, why would those two but not the others?
Right. You know, like, so yeah, so if I mean, obviously Charles is going to get more than 50% of the primary, but he's also going to get 100% of the general, so We're not worried about that one. But like, and I mean, honestly, like, I think all three primaries are going to be interesting in the at-large seats.
The large seats, yeah.
I think all three of them
definitely the most interesting thing we've got going on.
I mean, I think the only one.
Well, you want to just go through them? You want to talk through them?
Yeah, let's go.
Which one you want to start with?
Well, I'm starting on the bottom of my page. So Charles Thomas is District 5. He's going to win District 5.
Yep.
I still think, I still agree, and I think I'm still back and forth on how I feel about the state interceding on it, but even though it doesn't count this time, but next election cycle it's going to kick in, I think it's right. I think District 5 should vote for District 5, not the entire city when you get to city races. Now, this time it doesn't matter, and it wouldn't have mattered. That change doesn't go into effect until next cycle anyway.
Yeah,
everything else is at large going into this. So, you know, I think it's an interesting conversation in who should make those decisions, because there's a really interesting Supreme Court law that involves the state of Tennessee in elections in the 50s. And it's arguably one of the biggest cases in the history of the Supreme Court that nobody knows about. I have to go look it up, and I'll share the podcast that I listened to about it because it's really interesting because it happens to involve Tennessee, and essentially at one point in Tennessee, the way that Tennessee had their federal election, I can't remember exactly the totality. So there was their state seats. If you were a rural voter, it was like 26-1 voters or constituents from rural to urban. So if you're an urban voter, it took 26 people to equal one voter in a rural area.
Because of like the disproportionate amount of people in the districts.
Right. And so the Supreme Court part of it was like super interesting, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but you know, it's one of those, like, logically, yes, it makes sense. Tennessee needs to change their voting laws. Tennessee's not going to change their voting laws because they're Tennessee and that's what they want to do with themselves. I understand those, you know, the separation of states. That's what they're supposed to do, and blah, blah, blah. They're supposed to have their own thing. The Supreme Court's not supposed to get involved in politics, and what's more political than voting? Nothing. So it was a very interesting case in that aspect. This dude, one of the justices ended up having a panic attack and retiring and getting replaced because he was the vote. It was a 4-4, and he was in the middle. And he's like, I totally agree that this law, that the way they do voting is wrong, and it should be changed. But I can't bring myself to say the Supreme Court should decide on this, and because and I think there's some evidence that as that case finally got settled after he retired and was replaced and it was voted, the new justice came in and voted to force Tennessee to change their laws. It has then messed with a lot of different stuff nationally that would put the Supreme Court in a higher power structure than maybe they should have been, kind of thing. So anyway, I bring all that up to say that
fascinating.
I'm not sure how I feel about what the state did to the city.
Right.
But I think it's the right answer.
Yeah, I think you and I are in total agreement on this. Like, I don't like that the state came in and is forcing the city to do it this way. I wish the city had taken the initiative upon itself, you know, to improve it. But I'm also not gonna whine and scream about it. And I do think it's kind of interesting that there's lots of ways that the state has interfered with local governments in the past couple of years.
Right.
We got, the law where they stripped power from the Nashville Police Oversight Committee, made it more like Park. There have been, and that's not the only thing. Obviously, there's been a bunch of other ones too. But it's
they tried to. I guess the city of Nashville sued. I don't know where it's at currently, but they tried to cut the city of Nashville's commission or council or whatever their title is, like in half, because it's like a 41 member body, and the state had changed the law to like max it at 20 or something like that.
Right. Right. Well, our state government has no problem, taking actions that are going to be overturned by the Supreme Court, quickly. So,
true story.
With the drag law, and then the Teachers Association filed over the divisive concepts this week.
I see. I don't know. Yeah, we're going there. I'm sorry. Who's the boss? Like, who's the boss? Who owns and operates our schools?
I mean, you would think it'd be the school board, and then the superintendent is their administrator, right?
You would,
but then
you would be wrong,
right?
I mean,
because the federal government has a lot of control over stuff too, because the money flows through it. There's a lot of fingers in there.
I make this joke all the time, and I think it's accurate, and it's important that people wrap their heads around it. It is Tennessee State Schools, Knox County branch. There's no other way to look at it than that. The state of Tennessee owns it, owns all of it, controls all of it. Everything goes through them. The school board decision making is piddly this, that, and the other. It's nothing. Stupid. Do you get a credit to go to church for half a day at school or whatever? That kind of shit is what the school board handles. They hire a superintendent, and I mean, there's lots of little like minutia stuff that's important things that the school board does do. I'm not trying to say they're worthless, but when you're talking about, I want change in school, I want our schools to be better, I want our schools to do more, whatever it is, Jennifer Owens does nothing. Has nothing to do with that. That's when you got, for me at least, I'd have to get, Cat Bike is mine. So Cat Bike can do nothing for me when I want a change in Knox County School. It's not her fault. That's the way it works.
Right.
And so if I want to change, I have to go and I have to get Massey or Elaine Davis to do it for me, because I have to get them to lean on the State Board of Education to change the policy so that Knox County Schools can adjust to the policy that I want done. Like nothing happens in our school that doesn't come from the states. From the state level. And so if the state level wants to put some stupid divisive concept law in place, they're the boss. We voted the people in to put them there. I don't disagree that there's some legal issues with the way they set it up, but at the end of the day, it's the way the thing works.
Yeah, but I mean, they're making a constitutional claim, though. They're arguing. Well, I think it's a due process claim or something they're making, but
right. Basically, the law is so damn vague.
But the drag bill fell under something similar, right? Where it was also ruled vague and therefore unconstitutional, I believe, right?
Right. But the difference being is that is a constituent issue. That is a people issue. The drag bill issue versus this is a state body enacting its will on a state body.
Yeah, but I mean, people are still supposed to be able to influence that, right? Don't we get to? Is the state body entirely appointed? I guess I don't know how the state board is made is appointed members of the House and Senate, and I think there is some officials. They're electeds who are then appointed.
I think it's like a mixed group. I think there's I can't remember what the total number is, but it's a handful of people, and there are a couple of them out of the Senate, a couple out of the House, and then there are a couple that are like specifically administrators.
I gotcha. That
have been hired and appointed, having been principals or superintendents or something like that's their. Theoretically, some of them, like a DeVos character in some states may exist as well, who has no real educational background or maybe no public schools background. But I guess my point is that if the state of Tennessee wants to change. I can't think of a specific or whatever, but that involves the sheriff's office. The sheriff doesn't have a choice. He can't claim whatever because he's an elected office. He doesn't have to follow that. If the state says so, he has to. If the state says so, the Mayor Jacobs has to do a certain thing. Now the state said the guns in the library thing. The state said he could, didn't say he had to. And then Mr. Davis or whatever his guy kind of misspoke.
Yeah, there was like a clarification around that.
Kind of misspoke on it. But the end of the day is the state changed it, says the local can make the decision on this, and so he did. Now, prior to that, Mayor Jacobs didn't have a choice. The state said no guns in libraries. Mayor Jacobs can't say, I want guns in libraries. The state said, because that's the hierarchy of governing bodies telling who what to do and how it works. And the schools fall under the same thing to me. Not to me, like in reality, the schools fall under the same thing. And so I guess what's massively confusing to me about the school issues that most people get most animated about, and I don't disagree with people, like there's problems with their schools. I'm not pleased with it. I'm not happy that I have to put my kids through it and all that kind of stuff for myself. Like I think there's issues that need to be addressed. But I don't the people that are most animated about it are wanting the state to change the way they do it. It's like, well, it's pretty clear that they're not. They're going to do what they're doing. But those same people that are animated about it and want the state to do it are also super animated about the idea of any other schooling option for people. Like, I want to take my kids out and I want to do something with it. I can't afford it. I want a voucher. Vouchers are the greatest evil ever. It's like, well, public schools suck because the public governing it sucks at it. And you complain about them all the time. So give me a chance to get out.
Well, is it that the government sucks at running schools, or is it that
they choose to suck? It could be either.
Yeah, I mean that the whoever is in control of the Congress, the Republicans in Tennessee, have decided not to fully fund or not to invest in programs or to roll things back. So. I guess those are supposedly the representatives of the people making their choices, but then you get
which goes back to what we started of, right? Which how much they actually listen to what we want out of them, and again,
how representative they really are, and gerrymandering and blah blah blah.
Right, but again, to me, it's like the idea of of public schools being the only answer, but that they're also the biggest problem in the way they run. Where they run is like those two concepts don't jive. I get really confused.
Well, but the answer is fix public schools, right? Do public schools but better.
Well, sure, but how do we go about doing that? Well, we elect people that are going to invest in public schools. Well, what's the best way to invest in public schools?
Well, sometimes you need to change the structures altogether, right? Maybe
right. That's what I was.
The idea
I think
that we have a state board that's made up of electeds and administrators of some kind. Maybe we don't have the right setup.
Right. I mean, I think my gut reaction would be let's just take the state out of it. Let's let Knox County Schools make the decision. Let's take the funding out of it too. The state doesn't get to take the money. Let's take that 7% state sales tax. Let's drop it to 4%, but we'll keep our 9.25% here, and that whatever 3% difference stays locally, but has to go into Knox County Schools or something like that. I would assume the math comes out somewhere in there. Now the poorer counties will have problems with their school system. Then we got to figure out how that is. It's like I don't know. Like I don't know what the right way to do it is.
Yeah, I mean
But centralization seems to be the problem to me in this, particularly in this case.
Yeah,
like centralizing it and trying to make it uniform from Memphis to Tri-Cities just doesn't seem to make sense or be functionally workable, even with the right people in place.
So in charity and aid work, in third world countries and stuff like that, when they're trying to figure out how to distribute money or what things to spend money on, there have been a few. I don't have the sources right in front of me or whatever, but there have been a few experiments where they've just given people cash. Right? They're like, okay, we know this local place is suffering, and so we're going to give them a couple $100s so they can buy whatever they need. And people spent it on bicycles to help their transport their stuff, or they spent it on a cooking unit for their home or whatever. But people spent it on different things. They fixed a roof or something like that. Everybody spent it on different things, but they spent it on the things they needed. So what if our school system used a model like that, where there's like we have the state funding, right? It helps redistribute money throughout the state, to the sure. districts that aren't doing as well. But then the local districts get to decide what to spend that money on, rather than having so much dictated from the top.
Right.
That might be a more...
Right, because I think it works. But like with the part of the problem with the current model is that it's not. I still don't understand the old model of how they do the funding formula. Let alone trying to figure out the new one. But a lot of it is employee-based in the sense that, well, this many students of this age requires a teacher. This many students of this age, so the older the kids get, the bigger number of student to teacher ratio or whatever. And so like those, and so it's like, well, for every 200 students, you get a nurse, and for every whatever, because part of the problem with it is that gets weird, and this you'll talk to local school board people about this. It's like, okay, well, state says for every 600 students, you get a nurse. Well, for elementary schools, that's 3 different schools. Are we supposed to have a nurse do
the logistics doesn't make any sense.
A day a week at each school and then rotate weird on the other 2 days?
Well, she has to go to the school where somebody's going to get injured that day.
Right.
So that's what you got to do. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It should be like there's one nurse per 600 students and per school, or at least some kind of minimum there,
Right. But I would say, like, that seems to be part of it, because it's like, well, yeah, that might make sense in certain districts, but it's not going to make sense in all the districts. Like, right. I mean, especially in your rural districts, which is probably where that math is based on, where you have like 5 schools in the county, 1 high school, 1 middle, 3 elementary schools, and they're all on the same campus.
Yeah, and then it works if they're all on the same campus. Yeah,
right. And so it's like, who cares? You've got 3,000 students total. You got 5 nurses, and they can have 1 at each school.
It's like in addition to the 1 in 600, it should be like the nurse is no more than 30 minutes away from a student or something.
Right. And so I think I think it's a structural issue. I agree. I think it's one of those. I think I'm a local first person. I think that's the longer I've been arguing and talking and trying to understand stuff, the further away it gets, the harder it gets to make it functional. And I think schools are a prime example of that.
Yeah.
And again, I just can't wrap my head around the premise of public schools are the only way to do it. but our public school system sucks, and the people who run it suck. It's like, well, kind of give me a rock and a hard place here.
Well, if you want to talk about capitalism, I can say the same thing about that, right?
Sounds like it's going to suck. Anyway, back to local elections.
Yeah. So what we covered the judges. We talked about the Charlie's race.
Charles is good to go. So I'm going up from the bottom. So seat C.
Okay.
Best, Hill, Parker. I think that's probably the most competitive of the three.
Yeah, it's the most interesting, I'd say.
I think Amelia's in trouble.
Well, so I mean,
if I'm betting right now with what little knowledge I have, which is more than the average Knoxvillian, I'm guarantee you that. If I'm betting, I think it's going to be Hill and Best through the primary. I think Hill's going through no matter what.
Is it okay?
I think Hill is in.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
I think the money. I mean, he's second to Kincannon in total funding.
Yeah, he's got a lot of money. He's got a pretty series of slick ads on Facebook now. Like I think I saw one during Jeopardy the other night too. He's got a TV ad or two. Yeah, he's like sitting on a bench and he's talking to his daughter about addiction, I think. And then there was like another one. He's like sitting on a bench in the park downtown, Crutch Park.
Nice. I think that the name recognition's there. I think the name recognition's there more than actually even Amelia or Matthew for that matter. I mean, there's how many buildings in town have that Hatcher Hill thing out front? Yeah. How many people make the connection? I don't know. How many people are actually going to vote? Not that many. But I think he's getting through the primary no matter what. And then I think philosophically, the Parker Best fight is closer together philosophically than the Hill is anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I marked all my little cards here with like center, left, and right when I was like trying to figure out what people were. So obviously this is on a Knoxville scale, right?
Sure.
So you've got Parker is definitely the leftmost in this, right?
Right, far left.
Vocal, dissenter on council, the strong progressive, has introduced
city council movement
blah,
member.
blah, blah. Yeah, all that stuff. And you got Hill is on the right, real estate developer, right? Lots of money behind him. Slick campaign ads, got name recognition from his local businesses.
I mean, and again, politically speaking, what he's chair of planning. What he's a member of planning development.
Yeah, he's
also in the newly formed Sports Authority.
Right, that's right. I did forget that he is.
Which I'm curious. Some of the rules.
Is that a conflict?
I would think if he wins the seat, he's going to have to
leave the
vacate
Sports
both.
Authority. Yeah.
I would assume probably both of those.
Yeah, maybe.
But anyway,
sure.
Yeah. So Hill's your especially for city standards of your far right candidate.
Yeah, he's to the right in Knoxville for sure. And you got Best, who is It's kind of hard to put a finger on him. So I saw this week. Planned Parenthood endorsed Amelia Parker and specifically said that I don't know if it was Planned Parenthood who said it, but that's the scuttlebutt around it was that Best and Hill did not return their surveys.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and then the surveys had stuff about trans issues and things like that. And
I saw something. Maybe it was a comment on that somebody was like, if they won't explicitly say that they're pro-abortion or pro-life, excuse me.
Sure. Yeah.
If they won't specifically say that they're pro-life. Then they're not, pro-choice. Yeah, sorry, I'm mixing them up. That was my bad.
Yeah.
But if they won't specifically say they're pro-choice, then we're assuming they're not.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little bit of a.
It's a little extreme, but I can see some people having that attitude. Yeah. I mean, it's.
And again,
it's posting. It's always hyperbolic.
But to me, that's one of those like, okay, so what does a city councilor have to do with Planned Parenthood?
Right. That's not going to be
anything about Tennessee's abortion law.
Yeah, not much. It's not really.
So, like, I know endorsements count, and people listen to them. People pay attention to them. Obviously, this one person who commented on it is not going to vote for Best or Hill because they are not pro-choice enough. But it's
how big is that impact, right?
But But I mean, that it doesn't matter functionally.
Right.
Like, Amelia Parker could be very pro-choice and could advocate for all sorts of things.
And she has no input on.
And at the end of the day, right, she's certainly not going to get the city to agree with her to at least even draft a letter to the state to ask for something.
Probably not.
Although I think the city might actually if they did that one particular issue. But if she's the author of it, she's got the Gloria Johnson issue where she's so disagreeable all the time that they're going to disagree with her even when she's right. I mean, that's just the way. I mean,
you're right.
And I think that's normal people thing. Like, you got somebody that you disagree with all the time, even if they have a good idea. You're like, I really don't want to do it because I don't want them to. I don't want to give them the victory, especially in politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's his campaign platform? What is he saying? Because I'll say I look his up while I'm talking about. So I looked at Best's, and Best is definitely I spoke with him a little bit at an event, and then I went to his campaign website and read some stuff. And his campaign platform is all about collaboration and how working together is the way to move forward and stuff like that. So like, there's definitely, it's not stated directly on, there's nothing stated about Amelia Parker being, dissentious or whatever, but there's definitely a tone of he's like, I'm the conciliatory guy,
I gotcha. Okay.
Right. But I didn't. So yeah, what's Hill got?
All right. So according to Tim Hill for citycouncil.com, his priorities are: your safety comes first. You should feel safe in your homes and businesses. I will prioritize supporting police and fire department recruitment, training, operations, and funding. Furthermore, I'll ensure that the city's safety staff is effectively working with you, the people they serve.
Pretty standard,
sure.
Kind of right,
especially
center, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I mean, okay.
Center right. Yeah.
Yeah. We can get into the city of Knoxville cops here in a little bit. Good. Number 2, good jobs now and in the future. Good, well-paying jobs are crucial for sustaining and growing Knoxville's economy. They provide for families, strengthen our neighborhoods, and create a bright future for our children. I like to promote policies that attract these jobs to Knoxville and support the ones already established. So, TIFs and pilots, he's good. I mean, that's what that says to me. He's willing to help keep the train
jobs.
rolling.
Yeah.
Which I don't. It's one of those like I don't know where I feel like I don't know where I sit on these things. Like, for me, I just spent a bunch of money rehabbing a building and getting it up to shape and finally getting it open and fighting the city the whole fucking way. It would have been real groovy if I could have not paid taxes, any city taxes on
for 15 years.
The totality of, because I mean, again, not the building owner, it's a little bit different, but even that, like, I've got property tax I'm going to pay on all the stuff that I built into this space. It would be really nice if I could just not.
Right, and there are a lot of people getting that deal, just not you. Well, I shouldn't say there's a lot of projects getting that deal. I don't know how many people are getting it.
Right. And again, I think there's some structural issues in it. It's easy to go and see the big ones, and those are the big ones that we're all going to see and we're all going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And there's just not like I get the functional premise of being like, we could do $10,000 ones, or we could do $150,000 one. Which one gets us like, and realistically from the city's perspective, whether it's tax revenue, whether it's the employment numbers and stuff like that, because there's plenty of other places the city's going to make taxes. Because I mean, hell, you take, take that building there that's generating zero tax dollars in property or sales tax or anything else, and let's build something in it that's a business. That business is at least going to pay sales tax.
I disagree with that economic analysis though, because it entirely ignores the opportunity costs. Right, that like if we invest in this, we can't invest in that. Right, so you never say like in the baseball stadium analysis, I never saw an analysis of what if we spent $100 million on public housing and the economic impact of that instead. Right, you just don't ever get that story.
Right.
So
I mean, I see what you're saying, but again, like I think, like my comparison was more over small project, big project, and it's easier to just look at the big project, pass a big project.
Well, it's certainly easier to administer a smaller number of large projects than to administer a massive number of small projects. But I would argue that you are more likely to benefit the members of your community by doing more small projects, right?
Right.
Because when you're putting all of that money in the hands of a developer who is already large enough to do a large project like that, that affects your economy in a different way than when you put that money in the hands of people who are going to spend that money and are smaller businesses that are not making big investments and big capital purchases.
But the only other pushback on that, especially from the city view of it, is the density conversation. How many small projects can really play the density card like a big project? Again, we'll pick on Hill because Hill's doing that one at Gay Street and Summit Hill right there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of small companies that could do a project there that would get the density that the city needs. I won't even say want.
Sure, but that place, the city needs density, but that place is not like a high density apartment complex. It is a luxury apartment complex I think the studios in that place are starting at like $2,800 or something like that.
I'm sure it's not a cheap place to live.
Yeah, so it's like,
I mean, they did say they were dedicating the floor to
they always have some number of workforce housing units, but that's a very nebulous what that actually means.
But I mean, even in I don't know how many total units that thing's supposed to hold. But yes, it's commercial ground floor, commercial office place, second floor or whatever, and then residential with 3 or 4 floors above that or whatever. But a small developer or some small business owner trying to do a project there is not going to do a 7-story building.
Right.
And whether it's 1 unit per floor in a 7-story building or 3 per floor, that's still more dense than a one-story small thing that the small developer could do.
I agree, but again, opportunity cost, like we're taking that prime lot, we're taking that money, and we're giving it to luxury rather than more density, more affordability, right? So if it's gonna, that to me brings up the question of like, what are the tax dollars for, and who should they serve, right? Like if we're gonna give out a tax break, I feel like it should benefit the most people in the community that it can, or benefit in the way that it can. And we have a crazy rental crisis right now. Like I just saw, there's a letter going around.
Right, but you're not gonna be able to get a medium density apartment complex on there with the same amount of city investment. Because like nobody's gonna, maybe I don't know. It'd still have to be a big player developer that's going to put a 100 unit thing.
That's what I'm
there.
saying. Is if we are going to invest in a big developer, then we need to tag on those requirements that are saying more workforce, more requirement for affordability.
They're not going to do it because they don't get to make the money.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
I'm saying. Okay,
then we have nothing there, and then we have.
Then you invest in smaller projects. The real estate is hot in Knoxville right now. I don't. It blows my mind when people are like, this project doesn't. They're looking for like 12 and 15% rate of returns on projects for it to cash flow as far as banks are concerned. That's crazy to me.
Well, I don't quite understand the finance game of it. But my understanding of it is, like none of these, even the big developers aren't paying cash out of pocket anyway. They're taking loans on it, and the banks won't give the loans unless they're seeing the math saying they're getting these bigger returns. And at least when like the way Scott breaks it down is that pilot for the first 15 years or whatever gets it from the 10 to 13 that the banks want to see, and the banks aren't going to give the loan for it anyway. I don't know. I don't disagree with you. I do think I do think the opportunity cost is a real conversation to have, and it's something that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's my main
reality,
point.
Right.
Is like we don't talk about the opportunity. We're spending this here. Where aren't we spending it? It's always about this is going to generate X.
Yeah. So
anyway, diversion a little bit there.
Yeah. Number 3 for Mr. Hill, since that's what we were talking about, preserving and protecting Knoxville's neighborhoods. Those things don't line up for me. Like it's just philosophically incompatible. You can't be growth and development and jobs and employment and keep neighborhoods.
Right.
Like I think that did you see the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago with the Chickamauga thing?
No, I missed it.
Okay, it's just like it's not even a big. So Chickamauga runs between Central and Broadway, right up there on the south side of Sharps Ridge. This developer, he owns a 20-unit apartment complex there already, and then he's bought up a couple properties adjacent to it and wants to put like duplexes and triplexes on them. And the neighborhood's like, no, we don't want those here. And it's like, well, the city wants density, and I'm trying to provide some density. Well, we don't want those here. And so it got kicked down the road. They're going to bring it up at the next planning commission meeting. But it's like, well, we can't preserve that neighborhood. Like, I don't disagree with these people that don't want to have to do, like, that's their neighborhood. They want what they want in their neighborhood. But it's like, we have to have the development to have the density. We can't have both.
That's right.
It's just, they're not, it's not an option.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a case where, like, the city is engaged in picking winners and losers, right? And it's like, oh, we're going to put this development in your neighborhood where you don't want it instead of over here. But it's like that's always what the city is doing. Like the city has to, decide if we're going to do densification, we've got to do it somewhere. There's going to be backlash wherever you do it. You got to go forward with it and then proclaim the benefits. Because a lot of times what happens in these neighborhoods where new apartments come in is like it actually is not that bad. Right? They don't get the negative impacts they think they get, or they don't get as much. And when the apartment comes in, especially all the development proposals I've seen lately, they're widening roads and they're adding sidewalks and they're enhancing intersections and stuff along with this development. So if you're checking all those, I mean, I get it if a neighborhood's like you can't just drop a 3-story apartment complex in the middle of our street and do nothing, right? And not accommodate the increased traffic that's going to come from that. But if there are accommodations in place, then I mean, I guess the problem is that the people who are most motivated against a development like that are the ones who are going to show up right to the commission meeting or the planning planning committee meeting.
Like, I'm not going down to a planning commission meeting going like, yes, you need to make this development happen because we need the density.
Right. Like if there's an apartment complex across the city, I'm not going to a meeting about it because I don't know about it and don't care, even though I would hypothetically support something like that.
Right. Yeah, because I think that is something that needs to happen. We need to get density in this town. We cannot continue down this road. Knoxville, for the first time in written history, apparently has broken the national average for housing costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, which one of the saving grace of Knoxville was
That's how cheap it was.
cheap.
When I moved here, super cheap. Yeah. For
those of us lucky enough to own our homes or be in the process of owning our homes.
Well, I moved here in 2009, and we had there's been so many financial collapses. I forget when it was. Was it 2008? There was a big crash, and then the subprime and all that stuff. And when I bought my home, I got money from the government. They were giving out stipends for first-time home buyers, and my house was about $150,000. And 12 years later, it's about $300,000.
Yeah,
that's
about where I'm at too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's insane. It's like
I'm county. I don't have that extra tax bullshit. Yeah.
Like if I was trying to buy a house now, there's no way.
Yeah, we're about the same. We bought our house we bought this house in 2010. Pennies, and then we refinanced. We pulled some cash out for some medical stuff, and got cheaper. In the process.
Yeah.
And and now I could double my money on this house I sold it right now.
Yeah,
easy.
Yeah.
Like I get the calls every fucking day. You want to sell your house?
Right. So Knoxville is just blown up like that. So the city has got to respond. And the county has acknowledged it too, right? They're talking about densification in a lot of areas, and the city's got to do densification. But yeah, that does kind of clash with preserving and protecting.
But I think that goes back to the metro thing that I want so badly. It's like we need to why do we call it a city and a county? City is supposed to be the dense spot. That's supposed to be where more people live and all the commerce and stuff goes on in the city because that's where most people live.
Well, I like the little township idea that the county planning board was playing with, though, where there'll be certain areas in the county of higher density, like major intersections and major thoroughfares and stuff. Because that makes sense. Because you don't want to have to drive downtown to go to your grocery store.
Sure,
stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the problem with downtown is you have to get out of downtown to get a grocery store at this point.
Right.
But I mean, I feel like. You go and you're driving into New York. You're going through especially coming from upstate New York, not through Jersey. Jersey's gross, but you're driving in New York. You run into a city. It's not like you're in neighborhoods and then in neighborhoods and then in little single family neighborhoods and then there's a block of downtown, which is what Knoxville is. Mm-hmm. There's a block of downtown,
right?
We need to have multiple city blocks of downtown where it's multiple buildings of 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 stories. All stacked up next to each other where all the people live and all the things go on. And you can park or take a bus into town and do stuff and then take the bus out of town.
And places and more walkability and more mixed use and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the difference of a city and a county. County is supposed to be more rural. And and to me, if the county is going to is making some accommodations to try to raise density, to me, it leans into the idea that
we're kind of a metro area.
The totality
now.
of it is we're one space, and we need to treat it as such. And so, anyway, number 4 on Tim Hill is mental health, addiction, and homelessness. Apparently, with the ad you saw, which I mean, I've seen some positive stuff. County's supposed to be doing something with the states, trying to ask for some money from the state for additional funding because the state did set some aside, but we're trying to figure out the specifics. And then the fun game of where are we going to put it.
Right.
For a mental health facility, which we got to put it somewhere, and wherever it is, that's not where they want it. That's the one. So if you're going to go out and advocate when this mental health facility comes up and the neighborhood that it's going to be in is mad about it, you better get down there and say, yes, this is where it needs to be, or it's going to be in your neighborhood. So we need to figure out where it puts. Because I'm not that far from the old one we had.
Do we want to pull up either of the other candidates' sites?
Sure.
And look what their pillars are.
Let's see. That was Tim. Matt. Well, you already said we already did Matt.
We'll pull his up real quick. Let's just give it a glance because I gave it an overview, and I don't want to have giving it short shrift.
Bad spelling, but we'll get there. Best for Knoxville.
Yeah,
he's a handsome fella.
Yeah, good looking dude. Looks sharp there. Got those cufflinks on.
Got that Michael Strahan gap in the front there.
Looking, a little bit, yeah.
Looking good, my man.
That's a good look.
Meet Matt. Discover more. I'm Matt Best, community leader, advocate for Knoxville.
I believe that collaboration is the only way that Knoxville can solve its issues.
There you go.
Here's his 3 keys.
Okay. Vision for growth and economic impact. Cast a vision for what our city can become. It doesn't have one, wants to cast one. Business opportunities that lead to more development for residents in every neighborhood.
Okay.
City initiatives that can attract young professionals and retain local college graduates. Sounds like that thing we just read on Tim Hill. Equity and investment. This gets probably where a little bit of contention would come into place. Every community in the city should feel cared for. Okay, not just equality in spending. Previous neighborhoods neglected.
So
neighborhoods require more
he's not
attention.
just talking about preserving, protecting. He's talking about, do more equality in places that have been underserved before. So it's a little bit different message, right? It mentions under-resourced people in the city.
That's a fun phrase, more equality.
Yeah, more equality.
More creativity and support for under-resourced people in the city. Collaborative governance, cooperation amongst current council members, more avenues for community feedback on issues, joint initiatives with county officials on potentially transformative programs. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Collaboration. You're pretty close. I mean, it's
yeah.
All right. Let's go. Well, we're doing the things.
Yeah, let's do the thing. Let's look at what are Parker's points?
Do. Parker for city. Do.
Okay, got her story. What's maybe the priorities tab? Here we go. She's talking about got her first term.
Platform priorities: safe and healthy communities. During my first term, I anticipated working on issues of gun violence, youth violence. Ooh. That was his first term. Second term
goals. There we go.
Improve community health through the expansion of mental health resources by continuing to fight for expanded city as well as county, state, and federal funding for community-based services. Encourage community-based safety initiatives by educating community members of neighborhood and other grant opportunities by continuing to advocate for. This is about what it is. Like, it's just the continuing of what she's done.
Yeah, it's a continuation. Invest in community safety programs, more community-focused things. So it's in line with
development without displacement. That's a phrase.
Yeah.
The housing and economic development plans for the city must address major issues resulting from our city's anticipated growth and need for stabilization. Our housing market is currently out of reach for the majority of our residents, and interventions are needed to stabilize our housing market and produce the affordable housing stock for both rentals and homeownership desperately needed in our city. As Knoxville clearly becomes a destination city, our local economy, particularly sales tax revenue, grows.
That wasn't really called out was that called out in the other ones? The price of the housing market and rent and stuff? They didn't, not really. It was focused on business and jobs a lot.
Yep. Although the economy is booming, local small businesses, minority-owned businesses continue to see a disproportionate smaller share of the increased revenue in our city, including from city contracts. Our city can do better every year. Yep.
So you've got Hill, that's more to the right, preserve and protect,
right.
Promote business. You've got Best, who's promote business but worry about inequities. And then you've got Parker, who is very community focused, not focused so much on businesses and jobs, but focused on renters and homeowners and community members. That's kind of the tenor she takes there. So it's an interesting race because you've got an incumbent, right, in Amelia Parker, who's unpopular in some corners, I guess you would say. She's been a contentious city council member. You've got an obvious right wing contender, well funded, coming after with Tim Hill. But Best is interesting, right? Because there were two other seats, at large seats, to run for, and Seat B didn't have an incumbent, and Seat A had an incumbent, Fugate, who's a little more on the center right, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have asked the question, why did Best choose this race? And I've seen some quotes.
Well, I think B. I don't know this, but I know why B was off the table.
Right.
I don't think he wasn't running against Debbie.
Right. I've seen the quote repeated a couple times when he has made a statement about why he was running. It was that members of the community asked him to run for this seat. That's the line that I've seen, which makes me go, well, who
the community members? Wants you to get Amelia out.
Yeah. Who is members of the community that want you to get Amelia out? Yeah. That community, right? The community that wants Amelia out. So, like you said, it makes sense that he wouldn't run against for Seat B against Helsley. So Best is director of the Change Center, mm-hmm. right? The Change Center is connected to the Democratic Party. There's been Democratic Party events there, So Helsley,
more rank and file in the Democratic Party stuff. Helsley was a former treasurer or something like that,
right? And she's very involved in the Democratic Party. So they wouldn't want to run against each other, but why not run against? Why not run against Fugate? Why run against the obviously most progressive council member?
Right. I think Darren, jumping up to A, I think Darren is basically not running.
Right. Worsham.
Yeah.
He has a campaign but he kind of dropped out. He's not going to events.
Right. Didn't pull his petition fast enough is essentially what I've kind of heard on it.
Yeah. His campaign webpage is still up.
Had some family stuff, something like that.
Maybe.
I think is what I was like.
But yeah, I know
Which Best just had a kid, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, like just.
He's got some family stuff going on too. Suck it up there, Worsham. I don't know your deal.
Yeah, let's not spend too much time on his page.
I like Worsham City Council.
There we go. Eliminate homelessness, affordable housing, lower property taxes.
Okay.
Those, I don't know if lowering property taxes goes along with those other two.
Yeah, there's a disconnect in here somewhere. We're not lining up the.
If you could do all of those things, that would be great.
A plus B equals 37.
Yeah, new math.
Anyway, yeah. So, but again, from what I've heard, at least for all intents and purposes, he's not
right.
Actually, really running. And again, I don't think it was intentional. I don't think he went into it trying to jump out of the way. But I think he got started. And
right. Yeah. It happens.
Anyway,
yeah.
so anyway, the other part of A is Brooks and Fugate.
Yeah, let's look at Brooks.
Which I think Brooks is, from my understanding of it, I think Brooks is more of a
left, center, left.
More of a at least on the Knoxville
scale,
Knox County definition, he is a middle of the road Democrat.
Well, he's a former Democratic chair, right? I mean,
you might be right. I don't remember.
I think he was. I think he was chair of the Democratic Party for a little while in Knoxville.
Right, and then incumbent Lynn, who other than Testerman is probably the furthest right currently on council.
Sure. Yeah.
I think Janet's the furthest right, probably.
And again, on a Knoxville scale, they're not like DeSantis, right? They're
sure.
Lynn and Janet are both reasonable people, but
right.
as far as I know.
Right. I think I think Janet knew better than to try to run against what she tried to run when she tried to run for state. I think her state run negated her ability to try to retain this seat.
Right.
Because she had to. Because she had to paint herself further right than the city was ever going to vote for.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
And I, fair or not to her, that's just the way the world works. Because I think that's what kind of killed her campaign for state is that she's on this liberal ass city council.
Interesting.
And I think that's with how hard with I don't know. Everybody says 18's like Matt tells me all the time that 18's a winnable district for the Democrats, and I'm like, no, man.
Isn't it Matt's job to say that though?
I guess. But I mean,
I don't mean to short shift Matt, but he's. I mean, obviously, looking at Helsley, he built up a pretty good candidate there. I'd say between the county mayor run. But
they did not put a good candidate for 18. Greg Kaplan is. I thought he was a fantastic person. I wouldn't hate to hang out with him in a period of time, but he again going back to that personability, he just doesn't present well. Like he presents like a professor, which he is, and so he's kind of kind of small and snooty and whatever, and it's just like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you're not going to win politics like
that.
Right. And so anyway, so I think I don't know the Cameron Brooks campaign enough. I don't know the Fugate campaign enough.
You want to pull their pages up too?
We can pull doing that track? Sure, we can play that game. Cam or
There he is. What are his top three here? Donation
number
page
one
to start.
is
All right,
donate.
Yep. It's a pretty traditional way to start.
Here's me, my husband, and my dogs.
Yep.
Here's some endorsements. Change TN, which is your run-of-the-mill Democrat's going to get the Change TN sponsor every time. Let's do this together. Issues.
There we go.
Homeownership for working families. Jobs that pay a living wage. Support of public education. Affordability.
Okay.
Affordability of record inflation.
So that's not more jobs. That's jobs that pay a living wage. That's a different take on it.
What's a living wage?
There's a study for Knoxville. It's like $19 for one person or something. I think 17, 19, something like that.
It's just not. I mean, it's just it's not a. It's not a wage that employers can pay. I mean, it depends on the industry, but
right. Yeah, I mean, well, that to me points to an even greater systemic issue. Then, right? It's like if employers can't afford to pay that, and people can't afford to live on it, that means that you can't afford employees. So there's something wrong with the job market,
right?
Or the capital market, or whatever.
So yeah, well, it goes to the cost of living and stuff like that. Where does cost of living come from? I mean, I think the number 1A for most people cost of living is housing.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be 30% or 30% for income or whatever, and I don't think that's true
That's
for
not
most people.
No. And so I mean, it gets to if we're going to play that. Well, let's finish this and we'll play capitalism games for a little bit later. We're running out of time. We're going long. Home ownership, working family, jobs to pay a living wage. Again, pretty standard left issues. I don't know. I guess to be on this, and this goes across the board on all of them. Like I think, like the Hill one and the Amelia and the best one, like they at least touch on stuff that's in the wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, the support for public education. I knew you were going to say something about that. What does he say about it? What does it say? How much tax revenues to public education?
I didn't know Lynn had pitched it. She can't. It doesn't matter. She doesn't have a choice. She can pitch it all she fucking wants.
Yeah.
It's not. No difference. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
So you oppose the thing that she didn't have the ability to do anyway. Cool.
Right.
I mean, it's bad on Lynn. Don't get me wrong, but
it's interesting that he would choose that as one of the 4 items on his issue page. Though
I mean, I think. Well, I don't know. I think it's something that's big enough to put up there because I think I get it. Like as you made the joke, it's one of my issues. Everybody talks about schools and nobody has anything to do with it.
Right.
But we let them talk about it and get away with it. Now, to be fair, politically speaking, that is a fairly valid statement he's making. I have a candidate that wants to reduce funding. Doesn't matter. Like, I mean, to me,
doesn't matter if they can or
to me, the bigger hit is that she's talking about doing something she doesn't have the ability to do, or that the only way she could do that is we'd have to have a charter amendment, which is a huge fucking process, which is near impossible. But it would be on the November election. But they'd have to have a city charter amendment to do it. And so it's like, well, did Lynn try to go through the process? No. Did she realize that she wasn't capable of doing it without that process? Probably not. And so the hit to me on Lynn is that she pitched the idea that she had no ability to even
she stepped out there without doing the homework.
Right. You need to know that that's something that you can't really do before you say that out loud. Yeah. That's my hit on that. But I think politically speaking, as much as I disagree with the idea of anybody running a public school, I think it's something you need to make sure that's out there. Because I think it's a trigger for a lot of people. Because a lot of people care about schools, although I don't really think they do.
They sure say they do, though.
They say they do, and they talk about it, but I don't think they do. Because, I mean, again, going to roll back into that thing, everybody talks about it. Everybody runs on it. Everybody talks about how important it is that the people that they elect care about schools. Nobody ever does anything. Period. So you don't care about it. Because how many people aren't keeping their seats on incumbencies? Not many. I mean, how many state reps? I mean, how many terms has Becky Massey had now? How many terms has Richard Briggs had? Mm-hmm. How many terms hell, Gloria Johnson had? It's not a party thing. It's just we keep electing the same people over and over again because it's easy, I guess. I don't know what the reason is.
It's a nationwide phenomenon.
But if you're going to sit here and argue about how important schools are and keep electing the same people that keep doing the things that make the schools why they're bad, you obviously don't actually care about schools. It's just a fact, and it's an uncomfortable fact that you may not want to say out loud to yourself, but it's true. Because schools are lower on the list than other things.
Right. You're certainly not educating yourself about what the problems are if you're calling for the wrong people.
Or there are other things that are more important to you that the politics actually has something to do with, like taxes, which is probably the reality for most people. I think more people care about how much taxes they're losing to the state than they care about what's going on with their schools. Because those two things are very directly related. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I want better schools, but I don't want to pay more taxes. Well, then you don't want better schools.
Right.
That's just that. And that's fine. But let's just be honest about what you actually want here. And if that's the case, then let's hold on.
They're not willing to pay for it, yeah. Even if they...
Right. Then you don't want it. If you're not willing to pay for it, you don't want it. So deal with it. So anyway, Lynn's page, let's go jump over to Lynn. You get it real quick.
So yeah, we got Brooks focusing on affordability and jobs to pay a living wage and a little bit of education thing.
Right.
All right, so what's she got? Vision for Knoxville? Maybe click on that one. There we go.
Proven effective leadership.
Okay. Affordable housing, first one. Affordable Housing Trust Fund, pledging a minimum of $5 million annually for a decade. That's right. That did happen. She's saying she spearheaded that movement. Okay.
Public safety and accountability, increased pay for first responders, supported body cameras for Knoxville Police Department officers. Vision Zero, don't know what that is. No link or anything to support it. Support expansion of KPD's co-response team to respond to mental health emergency calls. That's an interesting one.
It's kind of just a list of things that happened while she was on council.
Well, her proven effective leadership.
Yeah,
so
okay,
I'm running on what I've done. It's not what I'm going to do. Let me show you how much I already did. Supported KUB broadband, developed service improvements. Our community is kind of tough like an artist.
Thoughtful economic growth that allows our citizens to thrive and supports a growing tax base.
By supporting KUB broadband and development service improvements. I don't understand what that means.
Right.
From downtown Morningside, Oakwood, Lincoln Park, West Hills, home, Mechanicsville, Knoxville is home to lively, diverse communities at a strong sense of place. Support greenways
and
advocated for sidewalks.
I don't know. Her list of accomplishments is not really blowing me away here, if I'm being honest.
I mean, on what city councilors can do,
I guess that's a fair point.
It's pretty decent. Supported an effort to seek grants to rebuild areas adversely impacted by urban renewal. You also supported an effort to seek grants for building a stupid fucking bridge for the University of Tennessee.
That's right.
What do you got to say about that?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody on city council loses for that one. I hate that one so much. I'm not glad it got the federal grant got refused. I would much prefer it because it's going to happen, and you city residents are going to pay for it.
Oh boy.
And the mayor and the county commission is going to hear about it if there's even $1 talked about in county taxes going towards it. Because I'm going to lose my shit. I'm so sick of University of Tennessee. I'm an alum. I went there. I have a fucking tube with a piece of paper in it that says I did good things there or some shit. I don't know, but it is the state of Tennessee's thing. State of Tennessee could pay their fucking bills, or they could take some of their revenues. Like, I'm pissed off about that entertainment district thing they're talking about doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really don't like that. Like,
I mean,
we're going to build a bunch of hotels on campus because we want the revenue from football season. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right, and we're going to put some nightlife and stuff like that. Where, yeah, I guess you're going to get your.
And this is forwarding the mission of educating our.
No, it's for profit. See, that's the thing that. They said it. This is this.
I know. That's what I hate about it the most. It's just mask off. And it's just like, oh, we're a university,
right,
but we're running an entertainment district.
Which to me is which leads into work. Okay, so we're going to build this bridge to nowhere, which really means that the university is going to start buying land up over there and developing more shit over there, which is going to take off the tax rolls. And so, what does the city get out of this?
A debt, I guess.
Maybe. I mean, the University of Tennessee is the second largest employer in Knox County, second only to Knox County. So there is a lot of people that work there, which sort of means there are a huge economic impact on the totality of things, and I get that and all that stuff. But it's like I mean, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they want it. The state will make it happen. The state has priority over anything the city or the county wants. But we shouldn't be actively promoting it. I'm so over it. Like, I'm so over the universities. Like we are not a college town anymore. And we need to stop acting like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot more to Knoxville.
Like, if the university doesn't want it, cool, good on you. What do you want us to do about it? We will gladly absorb all that property and sell it off because we could certainly redo some of those dorms into some apartment complexes and have some density in this neighborhood for once. I mean, it's not like they're going to pack up and leave no matter what happens. It's like we need a city that is separated from the schools. Like, you don't go to Atlanta and Georgia Tech owns Atlanta.
No.
Georgia Tech is in Atlanta. Okay, cool.
Right.
Great.
As it should be.
Right. But it's not Atlanta attached to Georgia Tech. It's Georgia Tech attached to Atlanta. And I think we need to wrap our heads around that idea. The university doesn't win every fucking time. Anyway, and then the mayor's race, the big ticket item. I don't know.
You skipped over B. You don't want to talk about Helsley and Marlowe?
Oh, yeah, I did skip over B. I apologize. I don't know anything about Marlowe, so you'll have to educate me.
So I only know about Marlowe from the anti-eviction work I did during the pandemic, because he owns a lot of rental units in the Mechanicsville area.
Wait, I lied. Sorry, I lied. He's the one that talked about killing.
You do know him. Yeah. Yeah, his old social media posts came up, but actually I didn't know about that. I already knew him from he speaks at city council pretty regularly. He's been showing up there a lot for the past couple of years. He specifically rebutted me a couple times in public forum. So. But yeah, I mean, he's a real estate guy. He's a bit of a gentrifier, right? He's in this Mechanicsville neighborhood. He's flipping these houses and renting them out to higher income folks than they used to go to. He had a little charity for a while. I think it's not operating anymore, but he was giving himself like $20,000 a year in credit for the office he ran out of his home for his charity. It's like I pulled his tax records because I was really curious, like I said.
Shit, I need to stop arguing with you then. I shut my mouth.
Yeah, but
I gotta be more careful or my taxes.
Yeah. So he's an interesting character, but yeah, I mean he's obviously far right with his anti-homeless kind of comments and some attitude he's displayed in council before. But he's like he often shows up to council just to tell the councilors and the mayor how great a job they've done. I think I've heard him give that speech a few times. So
nice.
That's kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, okay, so Debbie ran for mayor. She did fairly well considering being a Democrat in the city stuff. She is a run-of-the-mill Democrat, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
She's a union organizer, kind of stuff like that. Of the stuff that I know about Debbie and what the city council can do with what I know of Debbie, I don't know how much of that lines up well. I don't think that the city could block a union or support it. I mean, they could vocally support, I guess, but they couldn't do
There's
anything
not like a lot of action they could take.
Yeah, like so
to make the city more union friendly.
Right. If Axle Logistics wanted to go union, they could support it, but they couldn't like force Axle to do it, or they could stop Axle from not doing it, or something like that.
I guess you could argue that being a longtime union person brings you you have a labor perspective instead of a business perspective, or something like. I don't know if she's really playing that up.
I mean, that's usually the first thing when I hear her.
Yeah, longtime union organizer, well connected with the community. That's what I always hear. Because it was the UT workers. What was it? It was a UT union, wasn't it?
No, that was Cameron. She was. What was it? I cannot remember the union she headed.
Helsley.
Oh.
No N.
Helsley.
There you go.
I can spell everybody. It's proper names don't count. That's all I gotta say. It's the same webpage as her.
She's got an issues at the top. Okay.
Back to basics. Neighborhoods, affordability and housing, public safety, education, youth, homelessness.
Okay, so we got...
I don't care about basics. Neighborhoods.
Affordability's come up on several folks, but she's got the public safety on there, too.
Let's check out public safety.
What'd she say about public safety?
A starting point for... We need to have a fully staffed, well-trained, and well-compensated police force. So our police officers be able to afford to live in the city that they work to protect every day. Across the country, police forces are struggling to recruit and retain officers, and KPD is no exception. She offers a challenge for years, particularly in respect to recruiting and retaining women and people of color. And from her time fighting for city employees on the Civil Service Merit Board, Debbie has been first-hand changes to city council. Debbie will
work with
KPD to reduce barriers to women and people of color entering and staying in law enforcement.
Okay, so so our police department is supposed to have like 400 something full-time personnel, and they currently have 370, I think. 400 according to however they came up with that.
FBI puts out a thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's the number that they're supposed to have. So
yeah, I don't know.
So okay, hire more police. I would call that more.
Nope, she's got an education thing,
right? Well, what did she say about education?
Well, the city of Knoxville does not directly oversee our schools. The city does play a big role in investing in education.
She at least admits that in the first sentence there.
70% of the city's tax revenue currently goes towards funding Knox County schools. Debbie opposes efforts to defund public schools and will fight for resources of students. So you'll continue to do nothing but what currently stands. Check.
Yeah, does the city have any role in? It doesn't have any role in charter approvals or anything either, does it?
No. And I mean, fuck, the school board doesn't have anything to do with charter approvals. Really.
Right, that's right.
They do it.
They have a ceremony, a meeting where they do the thing, but then it doesn't matter.
The sad reality is that on homelessness, the sad reality is that some of our neighbors will never be able to produce enough income to be consistently housed, often due to disability. Debbie is committed to caring for our city's homeless population with compassion. She will fight to make services available on both temporary and permanent basis. Debbie will work to develop permanent and temporary housing options with the services needed the most. Okay.
Yeah. Which probably contrasts with Marlowe. He probably doesn't support the permanent so much. I don't know.
I mean, permanently somewhere else, I think he'd be happy.
Yeah, but not permanently supported housing.
I mean, I think that I have a little bit of a take on Knoxville's homelessness issue. I think the hodgepodge of faith-based organizations fucking sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hating on them trying and putting forth effort to do something and do anything. But especially now with our new shop down on Central, it's the day of the week that this charity gives food out. Everybody's here. and then everybody wanders to the next one, and everybody wanders to the next one. It's not doing anything.
Nope.
It's keeping
food. It's not a solution.
It's
just
keeping food in their belly, which is I guess better than nothing. But we're not doing anything but just letting them wander. And it's like that sounded terrible as a phrase out of my mouth, but that's what is happening.
Right.
We're just encouraging them to continue to wander.
Well, yeah, and there's not a route out once people are at that level, right? Once you've been homeless for a while, it's hard to get out of that situation. You can't get a job because you don't have an address, you don't have a place to bathe all the time and stuff like that. Even if you can get dressed up for an interview, you can't make it to work all the time because you don't have transportation or somewhere to stay and be safe. That just shuffling them along and serving them food outdoors where they are is not doing anything about the problem. And like you said, we have this hodgepodge of faith-based and private charity organizations and stuff, and it seems like the city and it is very reluctant, in the county too, but it's definitely a city problem. They're reluctant to step up and really do anything about that group other than
right. I mean, I think the start would
around.
be. I mean, I think the start, and I don't know how this would sit legally or whatever. The start would be is to regulate what is currently happening. Is like, okay, we can't have everybody just feeding all the time. Like that. Like let's see if we can maybe do this in a constructive manner where we get these groups together and have an organized system where we have some sort of.
Well, a lot of cities have done things like doing temporary campsites or permanent campsites where people can stay temporarily or whatever, that allow, a little more organization. And Ms. Parker put forward a proposal for something like that, changing the zoning code to allow for more services like that didn't pass. So there are solutions that other cities have tried that we're not trying.
Right. I mean, I think permanent supportive housing is the only real answer.
Yeah, and we do the permanent supportive housing. We do housing first. Those are the real answers. But it's like you have to do enough to address the problem. Yeah,
but I think one of the plays would be it's like you want to do something about this CARM or whatever or Salvation Army or whatever. Let's organize together and do this because none of you on your own are going to do housing.
Yeah,
but the 5 or 6 of you together, we might be able to do some housing. And feeding and instead of just feeding and wandering.
See, this is an issue on a national level though, because everywhere throughout our country has this kind of smattering of charities.
So let's
has this continuum of care type system.
Then let's play some capitalism games here and argue about it for a couple minutes because I think that's one of the things is like we're like you mentioned, $19 an hour living wage is not affordable for most businesses. So where's the problem?
Well, I would posit that the problem is the massive accumulation of wealth by the top 1% and the 1% of the 1%. It's the income inequality is the problem, right? That's the reason the small business owner can't afford to pay a wage that will let his workers afford their apartments is because our housing market is so screwed up because of basically capitalism, right? Because real estate is the dominant force in our local politics. Real estate developers are the dominant force in, who gets the pilots and who gets the tax breaks and pushing the zoning code in various directions and even paying attention. You've got Tim Hill, real estate developer.
But how do we get office? Okay, so outside of capitalism, how do we get housing? How do we get people to build houses without a profit motive?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the history of the United States, but we used to build public housing that was owned by the government. It was government funded, government built, and people paid rent to the government for public housing. Like we could still do that instead of, using the pilot program to, leverage our future tax income to, fund all these private developments. We could take the taxes and build public housing.
Leverage our current tax income.
Yeah.
To build public housing.
Or God forbid, raise taxes a little bit, especially on the largest property owners. I mean, I don't know exactly how it works in Tennessee state law, but conceptually you could institute a progressive property tax where either based on number of units or square feet, if you own a lot, you pay more for each, like your income tax works as well. Once you get above a certain bracket, you pay a higher percent
on the tip top.
But it discourages monopolization and conglomeration, which is one of the biggest problems we have. So Rand Property Management is the company that the letter went around this week. I mentioned a little bit of it earlier, where rents are expected to go up like 70% when they're renewed. Like the management has warned people that their rent is going to almost double. when their leases expire because they've been bought out by this RAND management company.
But okay, so the other side of the question is though, okay, so if we're displacing all these people because they can't afford the new rent, who's paying rent? How do they like? That's one of the things that I struggle with conceptually,
because people are moving here. There's an influx of people to Knoxville. We've our county has grown massively.
But what is Rand or whomever these big conglomerates that own all the properties in New York doing with that property there?
They're doing the same. So what they're doing is they're monopolizing, right? There's less competition, and they've also I don't know enough to dive totally into this, but a big factor is a computer program that they use now to determine what somebody's rent should be in the next year. You know, your mom and pop rent places, like they look at what people are paying, they ask their friends what rents are going on, and then they figure if they can raise your rent a little bit next year, right? They try to do some kind of calculus. But these big corporations, like the Rand Group, they subscribe to these computer programs that have tons and tons of data, and the computer program will crunch the numbers and say, hey, you can raise your rent 17% this year, and you might lose 3 people, but you'll still make more money. So they've built an algorithm that pulls humans out of the loop and actually automates cruelty a little bit is really what it's doing. It's like a normal person, a mom and pop landlord might talk to somebody and say, your rent's going up by this much. The person says, I can't afford that, and they'll negotiate. But when it comes from the computer, from your national headquarters, and you're just the manager at the local office that's one of 600 properties owned by Rand.
Boss says this is rent now.
Exactly. So that is what has happened in the past, 5-10 years or so.
But I mean, the algorithm. But I guess the algorithm still will do its work, even if it's a progressive tax rate.
Well, that's the thing, though, is what so landlords previously, the common practice was to try to keep the units full. Right. And like, I'm not going to, I might not raise this person's rent as much because I'd rather have somebody in the unit than not in the unit. But what the algorithm does is it figures out, you can lose 5 people, but if you raise your rent by 23%, it'll make up for it. So it's actually it's almost like you're decreasing your housing supply, right? Because the landlords are more able to put a squeeze on. I don't know. That is just like one facet, right, and a large facet of the complicated problems with our housing market, our housing situation. So, we're talking about affordability, right? How do you pay your employees a living wage when housing is so freaking expensive? It hurts everybody, and it really is these gigantic landlords squeezing, exploiting all of the value they can out of our real estate market. So,
I mean, I agree so much.
They don't care if we've got 1,000 more homeless people on the street, as long as they have 100 people paying 5 times as much.
Right, but at some point in the game, the algorithm doesn't work right anymore. Because at some point in the game, I'm not going to pay $3,500 in rent for this apartment because there's homeless people all around it because you guys can't keep them out.
Yeah, but it's smart though. It pulls in the data every year, and if more people left than they thought, they'll adjust and blah blah blah. It's just
right, but they have to adjust down at some point. I mean, they would have to.
Unless people keep moving here. That's the bet they're making, though, is that more people are going to move to Knoxville. People are going to get displaced. People are going to have to leave, but screw them. There's more people with money coming here from New York, California, Texas, somewhere else where prices have skyrocketed, and here's still a little bit cheaper.
I mean, I don't disagree with that in premise, and I'm not a big fan of the giant landlord game that's been happening as of late, especially with the single-family home situation. Although it does do wonders for me as a homeowner, but I do think I don't disagree that's the problem. But I mean, I think I think it's a governmental issue more as much, if not more, than it is a capitalism issue. Capitalism is going to capitalize. I get it. That's the fucking phrase. It's capitalism. That's what it's going to do, is get as much as it can out of whatever it has.
Mm-hmm.
But
if you have a dog that is extremely good at digging holes, and you need that dog to dig holes, you don't turn that dog loose in your yard and let it dig holes wherever it wants. Like, capitalism is something that we should put the reins on, point it towards what we want it to do, and then let it maximize profit where we think it should. That's what capitalism does, right? It maximizes profit. It maximizes
wherever
shareholder value wherever it can. But we need to we don't need the dog digging holes into the water main. You know what I'm saying? Or digging up the azaleas or whatever. My metaphor is kind of mixed here, but you follow what I'm saying. Capitalism is something, the profit motive is something that should be harnessed and put in, narrow, narrow reins or a narrow channel so that it does what we want it to do. right? And how capitalism works best in free markets. It works best where there's competition, where there's consumer choice, and where there's good consumer knowledge of what they're purchasing, where you can figure out what you're buying is really worth, what the market's gonna do. But real estate is not that. Right? We have zoning laws. We have a limited amount of physical earth that can be used for people to live on. And we have to manage those resources as a community, which is what government is supposed to do with, land use and zoning and all that stuff. And with collecting taxes and providing services. And so, if it's, what I guess, you were saying, what's the role for capitalism? How do we use capitalism? I guess the idea of the pilot programs and stuff is we're reining in capitalism, but that is not what we're doing with it. The original pilot programs were for federal hospitals, so that the federal hospitals didn't have to pay state and local taxes. They would make a payment in lieu of taxes because they didn't have to pay any taxes at all. And they would make that payment for the services that the city was rendering, trash pickup, sewer, electricity, whatever, police, fire, whatever. They're all those services are provided to this federal property, so they're making a payment in lieu of taxes. But the rationale behind that was, if there's a community benefit, we can do a pilot, and then instead of taxes, we'll get this money instead. And they started adapting that idea to a development mindset as well, and it ran rampant.
Right. So it's the corruption of government over time that is letting capitalism get away with some bullshit.
Because we have a system where it's the money in politics is what it comes back to, right? If you couldn't spend money to influence an election, in the way that you can. In modern days, it's worse after Citizens United and blah, blah, blah. If that wasn't possible for money to have such a strong influence, then it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be an issue, right? We wouldn't have fossil fuel companies providing false data to Congress and lying about the effects of their emissions, because
right, or getting some protections from lawsuit because of
because of what they spend. Yeah,
right. Because to me the problem of capitalism is government's ability to protect capitalists from their damages.
Yeah,
I think that's the one. I think bankruptcy law kind of falls into that in some ways, but I think there's a lot of different parts of it. Because I think at the end of the day, we're allowing space for corruption, I guess is the easiest way to say it. It's a corrupted system. It's a super corrupted system. And I guess to me, this is why I always get in the pushback game of it. It's I don't think capitalism is the problem. I think it's government's inability to do anything about it or be corrupted by it that is the issue at play here.
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, we are selfish people as a species. That's how this thing works. That's why we eat sugar by the pound if we can, because we can't help ourselves. That's what our body says we need, even though it's wrong. And that's how I think that's the human factor of things. I think they're
right.
I think
we are impulsive. We are somewhat greedy or whatever. By
I think
nature.
we're all. I think we're all greedy, and there's different levels to it. And,
sure.
I get on these big diatribes about how I think altruism is a falsity. I don't think there's anybody that's actually altruistic. At minimum, there's at least some self gratification for being a good person, and by definition, that makes it not altruistic to me. But and again, it's kind of hyperbolic and joking and saying it, but at the same time, it's I think at the end of the day, you would be hard pressed to truly find a person who is actually outwardly functionally altruistic. There's everybody has their own self-interest at heart. That's the way all living things function.
For sure.
I mean, or at least at their own self-interest to their family or something like that. The only true altruism comes with family protections and things like that to me.
So we have to acknowledge that and build our systems around that. And knowing that people are like that, we shouldn't allow individuals to accumulate massive amounts of power just because they've also accumulated wealth. But I mean,
right? I think that's an important distinction. Is that it's that. We're not saying you shouldn't be able to accumulate some wealth. Accumulate the shit out of some wealth,
for sure. Yeah,
but your wealth does not automatically include power. And I think that's the corruption issue.
Yeah,
that's
your
really
wealth should not be able to affect the government in such a way that the government gives you more wealth because you paid them for it.
Right. 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 Because I think that's where I always get. That's where the back and forth always happens for me. Is that I think corruption is the problem. I don't think that capitalism is the problem. I think it's the corrupt system that the capitalism gets to function in that is the problem, It's not the capitalist. Like
let me try to push back on that. Let me try to push back. So we're talking about human nature, right? And we're talking about humans inherently want to grab the sugar, right? We want if we acknowledge that aspect of human nature, and we know how powerful money is, right? You know, you pay somebody money to get them to do something for you. You know, like whether that be employment or contract work or bribe or something illegal, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
You know, you can, you know, money has influence over people because it has value and it, you know, you can get things with it that you need, you know. So acknowledging that, it's like you probably can't create a system of government where if somebody has Elon Musk or Bezos levels of wealth, that they wouldn't be able to influence it, right? It's like if you have that much wealth, you almost necessarily have influence because you're always going to be surrounded by people.
Nobody doesn't want something from you and is willing to do something because you have the ability to pay for it.
And enough of those people will be unethical or unprincipled, right? That if you have this desire for the sugar, they'll get it for you because they know you'll pay them, right?
Right.
So, you have to design a system that acknowledges that if people accumulate a lot of money, that is money and power are practically the same thing. And so should we even be allowing people to accumulate so much money? And I mean, we used to have high taxes on the rich back in the 40s, you know, where like you couldn't have accumulated that much money because if you made so much money, it got taxed at like 94% or whatever. And we had a wealth of services and built highways and parks.
All right, we have to do the news of the weird because Sam sent me it, and then
can we take a break first?
We're going to be like 5 minutes and we'll be done. Can you hold it?
Man, I've been holding it for like an hour.
All right,
let's go.
All right, so news of the weird. See, I fucked up the button. Anyway, from AP, say goodbye to Body Painting Day. New York City's annual celebration of nudity and artistry is no more. That's our news of the weird. We can discuss from here. If you've ever dreamed of standing naked in New York City with dozens of strangers while artists turn your skin into works of art, you have missed your chance. Sunday's Body Painting Day will be the final edition after more than a decade.
More than a decade. Wow.
Like I didn't realize there was so much like nudity happening.
Well, so a
couple of weeks ago,
toplessness is legal in New York, right? I've heard stories about that before.
I don't know. Like there was Cleveland apparently had a naked bike ride day.
Okay.
Or something like that. That's also now been canceled or something like that. I didn't realize there were so many organized.
Who canceled them? Why are they canceled?
Let's see. Move on. Time to move on and clear that plate. After Sunday's body painting finished, the participants, artists, and models will go through Washington Park, Brooklyn. Galoob, an artist and free speech activist who's been painting on nude models since 2007, started the annual body painting extravaganza to underscore the nudity of artistic purposes
for nudity for artistic purposes is legal
in New York.
Okay. So you can be
that
nude.
Hasn't stopped police from trying to halt the event.
If you're doing art. Okay.
2011, Galoob said he had 2 models arrested. Blah, blah, blah. Past iterations of the event have been held in Columbus Circle, Times Square, and other landmarks across the city. All participant models must be 18, but Sunday's event was no longer accepting applications. That's in the story. It doesn't say why. But
I guess it's time to clear the plate.
AP's really bad about that. They do these really like...
Just the facts, please.
Yeah. But it's like, I mean...
They had this thing. It's not around anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But why? I don't know. Like, it's I mean, it sounds to me like the guy that put it together is just done.
Yeah, 10 years of doing anything.
And nobody else is picking up the banner.
Right.
At least officially at this point. So, I don't know. That's the show. Got anything else?
Well, we barely got to the.
I know.
Didn't get to the mayor's race at all, even. But yeah,
I know. But like we were already
sure rambled
2+
a lot.
hours. I know. We had a good time. That's what I do. That's the show. That's what we do. Like I said. So there's a mayor race. Whatever. You know. Kid Cannon and
Yeah,
I like Constance. I don't see Constance getting out of the primary though.
She is certainly an entertaining candidate.
Yes, she's great. I want to have her back on the show. I need to have her back on the show because she was just fun to talk to.
She's always a
or maybe
blast.
Tallman, maybe that Jeff character. I don't remember. I can't remember. We'll see. Almost Agreement, gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, check out the website. I do not have a voter guide because I'm too lazy, but you can go to your favorite podcast provider. Like, share, friend, follow, subscribe, do all the things. Tell your friends about us. Thanks, man. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Hey, follow at East TN Stories on Instagram.
Yeah, and he's got 2 YouTube channels.
I do. East Tennessee News Stories and East Tennessee Police Stories.
Yes, and I will try to remember to put those links in the bio as well for everybody. So,
maybe spell my name right this time.
Probably not. Usually, I'm doing it tonight, so this is what we've been doing. So,
I'll take it.
Anyway, Tyler Givens, everybody. Thanks for coming out, man. It's good to see you. And we'll be back next week on the show.